States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let's take notice of the appeal process. Okay. Pursuant to the provisions of Section 2.68.030 of the Metropolitan Code of Laws, notice is hereby given that if you are not satisfied with the decision made by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission, you may appeal the decision by petitioning for a writ of certiorari with the Davidson County Chancery or Circuit Court. Your appeal must be filed within 60 days of the date of entry of the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission's decision. We advise you that you seek your own independent legal advice to ensure that your appeal is filed in a timely manner and that all procedural requirements have been met. We have two new members to the commission, and I would ask them to introduce themselves and tell us just a little bit about them.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Annie Claver. I am a almost 20-year resident of Nashville, mostly in East Nashville, which is my favorite neighborhood. I'm a local business owner of River Queen Voyages, which is a downtown river recreation company, and I'm a master captain with the United States Coast Guard. I look forward to serving on this commission, and thank you all so much.
Hello, everyone. I'm Erica Penley. I am glad to be serving with you all. I'm an attorney at Bass, Berry & Sims here in Nashville. I live in the Oak Hill area, and I've been a Nashville resident also for about 2 decades. And I am happy to bring sort of a neighborhood and someone who's doing that daily commute sort of perspective to the commission. So glad to be here.
Thank you. We'll now open the meeting to our public comment period, and it appears to have about 9 people who would like to speak. Is there a Dan?
I did not see that sheet over there. I couldn't put my name to it. If there's a space, I'd like to as well.
Well, they're already filling in extra spots beyond the number. It's supposed to be 8 individuals, and we already have 9. So unless it's urgent, I'd like to start with Daniel Chisholm. And for all the people who are going to be speaking, we are limiting them to 2 minutes timetable. Is that Mr. Chisholm?
Yes, I think so.
Okay.
He got it up. I guess he's asking.
Well, we can move on to the next person. Syed Kefi. And please remember that the public comment period is for matters that are on the agenda today.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm a bit stressful today, so don't mind me, please. First of all, I want to thank you for giving me a chance to express myself. And I'm really sorry I brought you this headache. I really didn't want to give you any hard time. I'm sorry I'm reading from the paper because I will not remember everything by heart. I want to keep my relation with you professional and smooth, so I can see, I see you again maybe in future. I can see there is a lawyer who want to put a pressure on the committee and threatening your decision today. I apologize for putting all of you in this situation. I was here from day one. I think when you say vintage cars, you will straight away remember my face. Everybody here, they know me by vintage cars. So from day one, I introduced myself as the owner of the Vintage Tour idea that I inspired from my visit to Europe. I was here from day one. Even the day of the inspection, I took Mr. Richard, he's not here today. I took him for the driving tour on downtown by myself. And he advised me to install emergency light on the car because it didn't have emergency light. So I'm here to make a business and provide income for my family. I'm not here to fight or creating problem. I was very naive to trust this person and applied under his name this application. That was my biggest mistake. I can't trust to keep doing any business with this person That's why I tried to split from him with less damages. So the main point that the permit was meant to be operated in downtown, and we supposed to do the business. But that person, he tried to sell the permit. So it's like he's taking my idea and he want to get money out of it. This time I decided to write down on paper because I might forget things. Finally, and with big hope, I'm requesting from you and your kindness a fair judgment, and take into consideration that I'm the one who fights for this idea for almost 1 year. From day one, I was here trying to convince all of you about every technical things about this business. So if this idea will be banned from okay, I'll make it very fast, okay. So if you want to ban the vintage cars from downtown and you don't want to give it to anybody, I will be more than happy with your decision. I will respect it, and I will understand your judgment. But if you decided to give these permits for whatever who applied for these vintage cars, please try to divide it on fair numbers between me and my competitive, because now he's trying to be my competitive.
Right.
Thank
We're
you.
Done. Thank you. Mr. Goebel? And please identify the issue on the docket today that you're, or on the agenda today. And
Not sure which. It's about approving more ETVs and scooters.
okay, thank
Is that
you.
good enough? My name is Ron Gobble. I have lived on 3rd Avenue for almost 2 decades, and I've worked on John Lewis Way, 5th Avenue for longer than that. And I'm on the board of directors of the Downtown Partnership, where we try to get a nice live, work, and play balance. And I think it's important that we continue that process. You've already approved not over 90 ETVs, and now you're being asked for more. You've already approved a lot of scooters, and you're asked for more. I'm saying enough is enough. You know, just an example of what we have to live with if you live downtown, and I love downtown, but I think it was Tuesday morning, I don't know what happened Monday night, but there was over a dozen scooters right by the courtyard at Marriott on Church Street. And then I get to my office and there's 5 blocking the door. So, you know, we've got these things all over the place. You go to Ophelia's and try to eat on the patio, and you can't talk that they help generate. So really, just to make it very short and simple, enough is enough. I appreciate your time and effort. It's a lot of work that you're going through, and I know you have hard decisions, but thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Goebel. And I should have explained for the new commissioners that we have this public comment starting about a year or 2 ago, where Governor Lee signed a bill that, or encouraged commissions to have a public availability for the public to make comment at the beginning. All right, the next person on here, I can't tell if it's a Jim or a Tim Mitchell.
If you please the commission, I'd like to preserve my time for the Birch.
Okay. Then I have a Kimberly, is it Smith? Smith. I'm good. Thank you, Ms. Smith.
Good afternoon to the commission. This is my first meeting that I've been to yet this year. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Kimberly Smith with Parking Authority LLC. We are a vehicle immobilization company that I know has been a bit of a hot button issue this year, and apologize for the absence for the other meetings. I did catch myself up with the online videos of the other meetings, so I am up to date. We just want to make ourselves, known and aware and available to help with any of the new, coming policies and stuff like that. Had made some attempts to reach out to some different people just to, let people know that we're here and available, and hadn't heard back from anybody. So I just wanted to take a minute to introduce myself to the commission. So like I said, first time I've been here yet this year. So thank y'all for everything y'all do.
Carla Gollier. Okay. And then I understand David Williams asked to be removed from the public comment, but it also had a / James Weaver. Mr. Weaver, were you going to make a comment? Okay. And then Pat Kudak?
I'll actually give him Mr. Winter.
Okay.
I have a request. Since I was at 3 back out, can I slide in and get the spot, or totally up to you?
Mr. Winters, why don't you go ahead and let's see if you can keep it to 2 minutes, and we'll see. I'll make a decision after I see how you do in the 2 minutes. Yeah. You're always pushing that envelope.
Michael Winters, a Nashville Tractor and Cruising. The agenda items are approval of minutes. I actually covered some of these items from last meeting, but secondarily with the low-speed vehicles and also some of the rule changes, a couple things I want to bring to the forefront. I just wanted to clarify, seeing how we were approving minutes from last meeting, that, and I want to say this correctly, any beer over 8% and or has spirits in it or liquor or anything of that related has nothing to do with this commission on ETVs. That is state level. I just wanted to clarify a nod I'm seeing over here just as a clarification that 8% and under is here, 8% over, spirits, liquor, whatever is state.
Well, I would say I'm not sure it's exactly that simple. There may be some that are under 8%.
That might have a spirit in it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
But yes, that is the beer board and the ABC are completely different entities from the Transportation Licensing Commission. The beer board is Metro. The State Alcoholic Beverages Commission is State of Tennessee. So if you want to serve spirits or liquor or wine, you really need to be talking to the state of Tennessee. But yes, this commission has no authority over booze of any kind.
Just wanted to clarify that, since that's part of the minutes. Next, we actually have a conflict between the rules here and the rules at Metro and related to beer. Currently, if you look at the beer board rules, if you go to TGI Fridays as an example, and me and 2 14-year-olds go, I can drink a beer. I can't leave 14-year-olds alone with margaritas, but there's no reason they can't sit at the table. On ETVs, if I have someone, party of 20 and one person's 18, the rule that is made currently with the ETVs is no one on that vehicle can drink if someone on that vehicle is under 21. To say this politely, the MTLC has overstepped their boundaries on making rules per Metro Charter, which I can read and reference if you want. Metro Charter 77.420C clearly says that no rule from the MTLC should contradict a Metro rule. So if Metro says I can have 18-year-olds on board as long as they're not drinking, just like you do at TGI Fridays, then I can have someone on my vehicle that's under 18 that's not drinking. I should be able to follow the same rules as a restaurant who has the same beer permit. So I guess what I'm asking is, we look at rules, we need to probably back out the rule that the TLC made saying that if you have someone under 21, that no one on the vehicle can drink, because that is in direct conflict of the Metro Code, and Metro Code, per its own rules, says does not have the power to enact a law that is contrary to state or Metro law, meaning Metro Beer Board.
Thank you, Mr. Winters.
Thank you.
All right, next on our agenda today, I'm going to close the public I'm going to close the public comment period. And next on our agenda is an election. As many folks know, Sal Hernandez served as chairperson of this commission for, 10 years? 2011, so almost 13 years, and served with distinction, and he has rotated off. So we are now in a spot, and I think we have a quorum, don't we? Yep. We're at a spot now where we need to have an election for a new chairperson. So the nominations are open for chairperson.
Chairman, I will nominate you.
Second.
Other nominations? Anybody want
Move the
to?
nomination cease. Second.
I guess I'm obligated to say, all those in favor of the nomination ceasing or closing? Any opposed? And that's kind of how we do a lot of our voting, unless it sounds like they're kind of even between nays and yays. So I will point out one thing. I believe my term comes up in October, so it may be a short term of being chairperson if I'm not reappointed to the board. So, TD, you look like you want to say something.
Yes, sir. And now we'll need to elect a vice chair, as you
Well,
previously
we
held
haven't
that
made an
position.
election yet. I just got nominated, that's all. Oh, boy. We're going to have to give you Robert's Rules of Order or something. You know. Anyway, the nominations have closed. All those in favor of Patrick McNally for chairperson of the Transportation Licensing Commission say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Just one?
No, I'd be happy to serve. I just wanted to point out that, you know, I'm subject to a recall in October, so, you know.
You do want to be reappointed, I hope.
We'll see how this goes in this one. So, anyway, let's keep moving.
We'll start working on the mayor.
Yeah, okay. Now we need to elect, because I was vice chair, so we need to elect a vice chair. And I'm going to open the nominations for vice chair. First of all, let me just ask, does somebody want to be vice chair? It's really not a bad position, having done it probably for 12 years as well, or 10 or 12.
How's the pay?
Same as
as the chair.
Yeah, same as you're getting now. You get one free parking spot, so or one free parking pass. But come on, we gotta have somebody nominate.
I'll nominate Commissioner Westlake.
Is there a second?
She's leaving today, so.
I'll second it.
All right. Other nominations? All right. I'm going to move to close the nominations for vice chair.
Second.
Okay.
Oh, aye. When you call for vote.
Yep. All those in favor of closing the nominations?
Oh, aye.
All right. Now, Ms. Commissioner Westlake, are you willing to serve?
I'm going to serve.
All right. Wonderful. All those in favor of Commissioner Westlake for vice chair, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. We've taken care of that business. Now, have all the commissioners had an opportunity to review the minutes from the previous meeting? Did you guys get copies of them? Okay, okay. I see a lot of shaking and nods of heads. I'll assume that means yes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes from the previous meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Now, Mr. Rooker is out today, and you are going to be filling in?
Yes, sir. Here to help the commission handle their business today.
Would you state your name for the record, please?
My name is T.D. Schlafer, and I am Mr. Rooker's assistant.
Mr. Slafer, we have next on the agenda, consent items. What is that about? And would you make sure you explain it in detail for the new commissioners, please?
Sure. For the benefit for new and old commissioners, this is Chapter 6.74 of the Metropolitan Code, OPVH, Other Passenger Vehicle for Hire. This could include limos, livery vehicles, or most often Uber Black vehicles. The higher end of Uber requires this licensure in order to operate. So we do get a number of applications for those Uber Black vehicles. All of these applications are in order, and staff recommends approval. I can read them into the minutes, or you can read them into the motion.
And when we're approving them, please explain what we're doing here, what we're actually granting.
You're granting a license for a company. Staff goes through, and this should have been included in your packet, their application as well as their business license. We check insurance. We check vehicle registrations. We do a background check on the drivers and ensure they have a driver's license as well. And these companies would operate, I believe most of them would be Uber Black type vehicles.
And we actually oversee Uber Black, but we do not oversee Uber, which the state, we were doing that at first, and then the state took that authority away from us. And most of these companies, as I recall, are single vehicles.
Many, if not all, most are, yes.
And generally, upon the recommendation of staff, we approve them all at one time. And that's why it's called a consent item. So,
That is correct. And I'll look to legal to make sure I'm tracking on this, but these do not require a finding of public convenience and necessity in Chapter OPVH.
I think they may be called certificates of public convenience and necessity, but there's not actually a requirement for such a finding in the chapter. I will say, I think if any of you wish to remove any items from the consent agenda to have them more thoroughly discussed, you can ask for that.
all right, is there a motion for approval of the other passenger vehicles for hire new company applications?
Move to approve.
All right. And so that's in the record, that's for CAM Transport, Kirlos Naros, King Transportations, Bellevue Limo, Maluki Limo, Adams Transportation, Supreme Team Services, MLC Transport, Knights Black Car Service, AGM Limo, and WHCTN LLC doing business as Zip Trip.
I'll second the motion.
Okay. All those in favor of approval of the listed OPVH company new applications, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, passes. Let's go on to the next agenda item, please.
The companies listed here previously had permits to operate as an OPVH. They failed to renew on time, so they have reapplied, gone back through the process again, and would like to again operate as OPVH vehicles. There are 4 companies that failed to meet their deadline to reapply.
Any concerns about these companies?
Staff would recommend approval.
Are there any questions from any of the commissioners about the approval process for the companies that failed to timely renew?
Was it just a timing issue?
March 31st was the renewal date for OPVH companies. Many did not come back in, and we don't know at the time whether they're done operating, whether they, what the case may be. And several of them over the past few months, you'll have noticed, have trickled back in, realizing that they can no longer operate their company through the Uber app, through the Uber Black.
Any other questions? All right, is there a motion regarding the other people vehicles for hire reapplications for untimely renewals?
Move to approve.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, keep going down the list there. We got OPVH request for to modify ownership.
This is 1111 Logistics LLC. Would like to add a partner. Anytime this comes to us, we bring it to you all for approval. This is just simply an additional partner to the business.
I'll make a motion that we approve the modification of ownership to 1111 Logistics LLC.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And we're on to taxi cabs request to change address.
Similar business, TN National Cab would like to change their address to 1451 Elm Hill Pike, Unit 300, Nashville, Tennessee. We bring this before the commission for your approval. We would recommend to approve.
Question, why does that come before this commission, an address change?
Per the code, per the Metro Code.
Move to approve.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Now we're on to the next agenda item, taxi cabs.
The annual hearing for taxi cabs is held in January. Snowed that day back in January. This was deferred to February. In February, the commission deferred until the conclusion of the Connect Downtown study, which brought us to last month. With the length of the agenda last month, it was listed. We didn't get to it. And so today, Regal Taxi has an attorney present that would like to present their application to you all.
Hold on, Mr. Lewis, let him finish, okay?
I'll just quickly add that we have 8 taxi cab companies operating 530 vehicles. This would be a new company requesting to operate 22 vehicles.
You're up. We need you at the table because it's
Yeah.
of course. And the reason is because we're being broadcast publicly, on TV. So you are. Identify yourself. Tell us who your client is, and then
Yes.
give us your story.
My name is Brian Lewis. I'm the attorney for Regal Taxi Cab, LLC.
My name is Romani Tadros. I'm here for open the new business for the taxi company. Nice to meet you guys.
And we also have Zachy Fawzi, who is also the other owner of Regal Taxi. He is out of town with a family member on a medical procedure, but we're just simply asking the board to approve our application for a new taxi cab company. It was my understanding it was deferred and waiting for the Connect Downtown Action Plan to come out. I've gone through the plan, read through it, and saw really no mention of taxi cabs or any reason as to why there should or should not be another company at this point based upon my reading of it, and would simply ask the board to allow my client to have his application approved.
Ms. Costones, does this require the standard of public convenience and necessity to add more taxi cabs?
So for taxi cabs, it does. Let me see if I can find you that relevant language. It's in Chapter 672 of the Metropolitan Code. 1 second while I pull that up.
While you're looking that up, let me ask a question of NDOT. TD, do you have available right now the number of taxi cabs we used to have and what we're down to now? Looks like you've already prepared that, so.
I had it on the PowerPoint from the last meeting. I can recall prior to the proliferation of Uber and Lyft, there were over 1,300 taxi cabs at its height, and down now to 530.
So there's been a significant decline in taxi cabs. Because I remember back when we had 1,300, we had very aggressive meetings for additional cabs being, Mr. Rogers remembers too. Does NDOT have a recommendation on this one?
Given the fact that there's such a space issue in downtown Nashville, so much congestion from a safety perspective, NDOT would not recommend adding anything that adds more strain on the downtown core.
Okay. Ms. Costones, did you find the particular regulation or the standard?
Yes. In Metro Code Section 672.060, says findings, issuance of certificate or additional permits. The Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission finds that further or additional taxi cab service in the metropolitan government area is required by the public convenience and necessity, and that the applicant is fit, willing, and able to provide such transportation and to conform to the provisions of this chapter and the rules promulgated by the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission. The Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission may issue a certificate of public convenience and necessity stating the names and addresses of the applicant, the number of vehicles authorized upon such certificate, and the date of issuance. In making the above findings, the Metropolitan Transportation Licensing Commission shall, at a minimum, take into consideration the number of taxi cabs already in operation, whether existing transportation is adequate to meet the public need, the character, experience, financial condition, and responsibility of the applicant, and such criteria as may be adopted by the Commission in its rules. And we've historically applied the same standard to existing certificate holders asking for new permits to be added to their fleets.
If I could ask a legal question, we have no control over the number of Ubers or Lyfts, correct?
That is correct.
So I can become a Uber driver today and drive downtown tonight?
I don't know exactly how the state
but
goes
if-
about approving them,
Yes.
if at all. I'm not, the state statute is really weird. It says that the State Department of Safety doesn't have jurisdiction over it, but it doesn't say who does, so I have no idea who does that for them.
But it's not us.
It is not us.
All right.
I have a question for NDOT. Do we have data that shows that taxis add cars or potentially reduce cars? Because if people are downtown and decide, well, I can take a taxi instead of bringing my own vehicle, then maybe there's an opportunity to reduce cars. Is there data that suggests that taxis add or subtract from congestion?
Good afternoon, Diana Alarcon, Director of the Department of Transportation Multimodal Infrastructure and Connect Downtown. We didn't decipher the difference between a car or a taxi or an Uber, but we know that the current network downtown is already close to capacity. And we know that by the fact that we cannot just move people in and out of downtown. And so part of Connect Downtown also gave us suggestions and recommendations that we're working on and starting to implement. And so just adding more capacity is going to continue to crowd the network, that it'll even slow down more. So we also are out enforcing on a regular basis, and we spend a majority of our evening moving Ubers and taxis along on a nightly basis because they will stop and wait for a pickup. And so part of Connect Downtown has asked us to look at and has recommended places of where ride sharing and taxis would preside at to help reduce those conflicts. We just have not implemented them as of yet. We're focusing first on getting the scooters and the bikes straight, which we are very close to having that map completed, working with the industry. So we would install that first. Then we will be doing the loading and loading zones along with doing the ride share as well as the taxi stations at that time. So we are at pretty close to capacity of being able to move people safely. And it's a continued competition between giving priority of safety to the pedestrian or to the vehicle.
Do you have a timeline on phase 2?
So the implementation of, in phase 1, there's 4 things that we're looking to implement. The first one is the traffic signals, which we are working on that right now. That was the first thing we wanted out of the box. So we're in the process of starting to work on we're waiting for our equipment to come in, and we'll start updating all this signalization so we can move to real-time adaptive signalization and the downtown core. The second thing that we were working on was actually getting the corrals set up for the bikes and for the scooters. We are hoping that maybe by tomorrow we'll have that map done, staff will review it, and we'll start the implementation of that. We have just finalized our contract with Automus, which is the company with TMP, because that had to go before the Traffic and Parking Commission. We just finalized that contract with them, and we're now working on finalizing the rollout of that pilot program. So we're hoping that we'll have that done and start installing it. Plus, we have a project manager who's starting on Monday with us that's going to oversee all this implementation so we can stay on schedule. When we first came back with the update on Connect Downtown, we had said phase 1 would be a 15 to 18 month implementation. So we're on, the second month. No. The first month. We're really on the first month of actually starting installation, but that was our goal. And then the last thing was, of course, getting the loading and the ride shares all in place. So those were the first phase 1, and that's what we're focusing in on right now.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Lewis, in light of the standard that's been applied, I have 2 questions first. One, can you address to the standard of public convenience and necessity for the reason why we should consider adding 22 cabs to downtown? And then the second question is, are you intending to have the cabs downtown, or are you going to be servicing the outer parts of the county?
First, I'd like to address the first issue. I think the board, it might have been answered by staff. There were 1,200 cabs earlier, and now we're down to 600 cabs. So there's a definite public necessity. In my mind, you've cut the number of cabs in half at this point. And I've also heard Ms. Alarcon's testimony. I've seen no specific data that has cited how cabs are going to hurt downtown. I've seen no studies put before the board here today, no hard data, and have reviewed the plan. And as for the areas they're going to service, I'll let my client address that.
Yeah, we service everywhere. So I didn't accept I had the driver, they got the permit to work in downtown Nashville, to work in the airport, just working everywhere. I didn't bring nobody from outside, a new driver. So I'm ready to have the driver work in the taxi to get a taxi experience too. So yeah, so I don't have new driver. And you see, this is a lot of driver now in driving taxi, but the TLC, the transportation, he keep giving another companies the new numbers. So
Maybe I will address, are you going to specifically drive in the downtown area, or are you going to service Davidson County as a whole?
Davidson County, so
Are you going to service the airport?
the airport too.
But the passengers you pick up at the airport may be coming to hotels downtown.
Yes, so we become from the, so if I pick up the passenger from the airport to the downtown Nashville, the hotels or anywhere, so we can pick up from the downtown to wherever the location going to.
Jerry?
Yep.
Can I ask for a point of clarification to
Mr. Lewis.
Mr. Lewis's point? Was it that the number of licenses for taxis have gone down because of their business has gone down, or it's not because of any action taken by this commission, correct?
You're correct. My recollection is that the permits were surrendered at the time when Uber shut off.
Because demand was down. Okay.
The demand shifted.
Shifted. It's a great point. Yes.
Supply
Chair.
shifted. Demand didn't shift, supply did.
Yeah, I think that's true. Just in thinking about public convenience, need, necessity, I would just like to make the point that outside of downtown, the community of people I work with, seniors, people with disabilities, people who don't have licenses for one reason or another, often prefer to rely on a cab than to rely on Uber. Feels safer, and that might be going to the grocery store, it might be going to a doctor's appointment. Do you know? So I think there is a real need for licensed taxi cabs. I don't know exactly what that number is, but I know that it's important to the community of people I serve.
Mr. Schaefer, will you help educate or help inform new members of the commission, as well as maybe some, as you described, as older members of the commission, as to what is required for a cab to be permitted to be on the streets of Davidson County? If you know that.
Been some time since we've had a new application for a new cab company, but for the drivers,
I want to go more to what does a cab look like different than a Uber, a non-black Uber?
understood. A licensed taxi cab would have a top light. It would have the name of the company on the side. The cab would have a number. Each cab is an individually numbered. The inside of the cab would contain a meter, and there would be a bill of rights, a passenger's bill of rights displayed, as well as a rate card, and then the permit of the driver would also be displayed inside of the cab.
And as I recall, there's also some video camera recording equipment inside the cabs.
I've never been in one, to be fair.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I can look it up.
And there's a way for the passenger to use their credit card without having to hand it over to the cab, I will, from a historical perspective, we used to we have annually a date set for new applications for taxi cabs, typically in January, as it was said before. It was deferred this year, waiting for the report, and then apparently at the last meeting it was deferred again. In the past, that used to be very competitive and very, I won't say litigious, but it was very, it was a busy meeting. So, but when Uber came in, many of the taxi cab companies surrendered their permits because they just didn't have the business, and their drivers were switching over to Uber, many to Uber Black. So we went from 1,300, and the last number I saw was 600 some, and I guess we're now down to 500 something. This is the first time in what, a couple of years that we've had an application for a new company and for additional permits?
I believe I traced it back to 2016 was the last time we had a request for additional taxi cabs.
Now, as I understand, we can approve first the application for the new company, and then we can decide on a public necessity and convenience as to the number of permits to issue the new company. So it's kind of it can be a two-step process. So.
Could I ask a question? Could I ask the applicant, what's your business plan? Do you have 22 cars and 22 drivers, or how do you intend to get on the street?
Yes, I got a 22 car and 22 drivers.
Okay.
That's already I have the permit already.
Okay. What was that?
I have a question about the cars. To the commissioner's point about driving around seniors or folks who may not be able to drive themselves, do you have any ADA capability inside any of the vehicles?
Yes. Yes, we got them.
In how many of the vehicles?
The sum is like 15.
15 of the 22?
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, tell me a little more detail. What is it that you have for convenience of ADA?
We help the old people for just like safety in the car. So for the drop off, and you know, we got like all of them. I don't know how we call them. So pick up like from the door. You're talking about like the old people picking up from the whatever the location, and we drop all like safety to the door, and there's like everything is safety in the car. So there's like a seatbelt.
Do you have any minivans that have a lift for a wheelchair?
We got like the wheelchair is only one.
So you have one vehicle that.
The wheelchair, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm taking a look at their list of vehicles, and the majority are minivans, which is helpful. Not everybody needs a wheelchair lift, but having one is really important. Having more would be better.
How many are minivans versus sedans?
The minivans, I guess, like 18 minivans, and it's like 3 or 4. Yeah, 4 this the regular cars. So it was USB.
Actually, looks like about 20.
20 are minivans.
Mm-hmm. And then a Fiat 500 and a Highlander. It's in the packet. I have to say, I appreciate the door-to-door service for folks with disabilities who need a little help getting into the car or getting from their home into the taxi.
And as somebody who will need that before long, I agree.
And I will just add that I did try to look up the camera requirement. I didn't see one. I saw GPS.
Okay.
Thank you.
I do believe there is a standard in your regulations for ADA accessible cabs, and I do believe they are given some preference in terms of the funding of a certificate of convenience and necessity.
We've done that. We have done that in the past, yes.
Chair McNally, it occurs to me you might be thinking of the entertainment transportation vehicles do have a camera requirement.
Okay. Being corrected already today. Are there any other questions? Mr. Lewis, do you have any other input regarding the standard of convenience and necessity, public convenience and necessity? Because that's our threshold question.
No, Mr. Chairman, I think y'all have covered a lot of valid points here today.
I guess the only thing I would add is I would assume with this many vehicles in play that you must perceive there to be a demand downtown. Otherwise, it'd be all expense with no revenue.
I think there's also a demand within my client's community, also his specific community, and a lot of his business is going to be directed towards his specific community.
Where is that community?
Talking about just like the new service uniforms and the companies.
Sorry, where's the community you're referring to? Where is that located?
Do we live in Smyrna? So I got it another location in Antioch.
Mr. Chairman, you had mentioned that there are two parts of this, the approval of the business and then also the number of vehicles to which there would be approval.
Correct.
So maybe that might be something that we consider as given.
That might be very helpful to have the other partner here also when he is not dealing with a medical emergency out of town, if we want to do the first part and then come in on the second part with that. I have no.
Well, typically, we don't approve the business unless we're going to at least be inclined to give one cab. No sense having a business license and paying everything and not having something to make some revenue with. So, yes, well, we can take that up part by piece by piece.
I think it's appropriate. We do get so downtown centric with this commission just because everything that has been going on and study and one thing and another. But I would urge us to think about other parts of Nashville that don't have all the Uber service, that don't have all of the entertainment service, and where those communities that often get ignored. And if a cab company is willing to serve those communities, I think that's really important. Just comment.
All right, is there a motion on Regal Taxi's application, taxi cab company application?
I move we approve 22 permits for Regal Taxi Cab. Regal, did I get that right?
Are you making a finding that there's a necessity for 22 additional permits?
Do we have to do that first?
You're supposed to, yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. I'll move that we find there is a public need, a public necessity and convenience for, do we need the exact number or just, can I say more taxis?
Your choice.
Yes, that we need more taxis. Starting with 22. Is that appropriate?
Yep, I second that.
Any discussion before we vote? Or further discussion?
No.
No, sir. All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. The motion to find that there's a public necessity and convenience for additional, I think it was actually 22 taxi cabs, has been approved.
I move we approve the application for 22 new permits for Regal Taxi.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Your company's been approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
I do want to encourage you to really think about that Antioch Smyrna community and service to senior citizens and folks who I want you to do better than just your best, okay? Thank you. I'm holding you to it.
Could I ask a question of our staff? We have a set rate to the airport, correctly? What is it? I can't remember. We increased it not long ago, didn't we?
I believe it's 30 or 35, depending on where you're coming from. I can pull up the rule.
It's 30 in the CBD.
All right, we ready to move on to the next agenda, or Mr. Sheffer, you need a minute or two? Okay. Oh, the rates, yeah. You sure those are the current rates? Okay. All right, now we're on to the load speed vehicles. Consideration for an application for a new company, Vintage Nashville Tours, requesting 20 permits. Mr. Shaver?
Low-speed vehicles are enumerated in 6.73 of Metro Code. They look a lot like golf carts if you see them out on the street. Per state law, they've been modified to be street legal and are known under this category as low-speed vehicles. We had an annual hearing for additional low-speed vehicle companies back in September of 2023. The decision was deferred until after the Connect Downtown study was received. We currently have one company operating as a low-speed vehicle company with 37 permits. This is a new application for Vintage Nashville Tour for 20 permits.
May it please the commission, my name is Nathan Colburn. I'm here with Mr. Sharif Gurges. He is the manager of Vintage Tour Nashville's, and I am their attorney. Today we are asking for the commission to approve this for purposes of touring. It's not an entertainment vehicle. As you can see from the photo, my clients have procured one vehicle thus far. They're wanting to procure more, but they didn't want to invest on buying all of those vehicles until the business model was approved. But they have the capital to do it. They've secured the storage at a downtown garage to be able to store these vehicles. And we were at the last meeting, and I'm aware of what Connect Downtown and the recommendations related to that are. As you can see from the photo of the vehicle, there's no doubt that it has uniqueness, which is required. As the gentleman from NDOT stated, there's only one company right now that holds all of the cards, and that is Joyride. They have all of the low-speed vehicles, and so the necessity in this community would be to create competition in the marketplace for these kind of tours for the people that come to and from Nashville. And so I think when you couple the uniqueness of the vehicle, the lack of competition in the marketplace, and the fact that it is electric, which would allow for less emissions, it's quieter. I know that there's been some complaints about the noise in the downtown district. These would not be those problems. And the commission also has the ability to set tour routes, meaning that some of the areas that have higher concentrations of traffic could be mitigated by allowing certain different areas like the Bicentennial Mall or certain parts of historic Nashville where people might want to see. Since it's a vintage vehicle, there's certain older places outside of downtown, specifically the Broadway area, where we're all aware it becomes very congested. And so that's what we're looking for. I think that I've addressed the necessity, but I think that the NDOT website says that we exist to create a safe, sustainable, and balanced transportation system that supports choice and offers opportunities for vibrancy for present and future generations. And I think that this is in compliance with that because it allows for choice. And as you can see from the photo of the vehicle, it's definitely vibrant. It's not a vintage vehicle. It's an electric vehicle that has a fiberglass shell that looks vintage. And so it's in essence like a golf cart. And that is the gist of the application. What kind of questions do you all have?
What's the speed range on this vintage vehicle?
It's in, okay, go ahead, Mr. Kurtz.
Minimum is going to be 20, maximum 25 under the LSV.
So 20 to 25?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And last time there was an issue with the safety of the vehicle, so we were able to purchase
Speak
the
up,
vehicle.
please.
We were able to purchase the vehicle and did an inspection with Mr. Rooker. We took him for a drive-through around town. We inspected seat belt, horn, brake lights, turn signals, brakes, headlights, and all the safety measures.
What does a vehicle like this operate with the 25 being the maximum when speed limits, on major streets might be 30, 40?
We're only permitted on certain streets, 35 miles per hour or less for the LSV. And currently there's only one company right now, which is Joyride, and they're doing something completely different.
So the maximum speed on the streets of which they're allowed to operate underneath the statute is 35 miles per hour. And so they would be within the acceptable range of traffic flow as it relates to that. There shouldn't be any need to get much higher than that. It's going to be neighborhood streets for the most part. if it's a max 35 mile an hour range.
On Broadway, you can't go more than 35 miles per hour on Broadway.
Yeah.
Not residential.
Residential will be 30, right?
No, 25.
Okay.
25 and
30 or 35 on collectors, right? More or less.
Right. I'm sorry, I misspoke.
You don't have to ask permission. Go.
A question with respect to the touring description of this vehicle, as opposed to joyride, which I think of as like tooting around to get somebody from one part of someplace to another, as an alternative to a short route
Correct.
taxi or something like that. Is this a tour as in like giving information, or what makes it a tour versus a direct joyride competitor?
Well, I think that the business model allows for both. And
Okay.
so it's not that we have neither. It's that, or one or the other rather. I suppose it'll be more along the lines of you can ride in this beautiful car and we can take you to and from like joyride, but I think they also have anticipation of having a tour as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
And when we took Mr. Rooker for a ride, we seen heads turn around, people were taking pictures, kids were happy, they want to do the horn. So it's really good for families, friends, and no drinking or anything like that, so no liquor or anything.
I have a clarification question. You said that you're applying for 20 permits.
Yes.
And how many vehicles do you have in your possession right now?
We currently had no vehicles, but we purchased the vehicle just so you could guys inspect it and make sure they did follow all the safety procedures. And
So you're applying for 20 permits and you have one.
I have one right now, yes,
But-
because we bought one vehicle just to make sure that it was met all the safety requirements for the LSV.
They have the capital to secure the other vehicles. It's just they don't want to purchase 20 electric vehicles and then not have a market to be able to
I understand
apply.
the catch-22 that's involved there.
Yeah.
What is your rate structure going to be?
I don't know.
So the rate structure is going to depend per 1 hour, 2 hours, if they want like just for transportation from one destination to the other.
So give us some examples of what you're thinking about for the rate structures. Say from the hotel to the football stadium.
Yeah, we want to have the most affordable rates for family and friends. So we will look at the market and see what's going to be the best option for families and friends.
Are there, like with what was just previously displayed, are there set structures that have to be followed other than whatever the market would control? I don't think so. Okay.
There are no rules in place for low-speed vehicles. I did put up the operational zone for low-speed vehicles. It's the green area. The commission has put this rule in place where this is where you're allowed to go.
Right.
Green?
It's the inner part. The outside's kind of gray. It kind of looks like a clover, I think.
I have a question as someone who's new, first time here. There was a public comment made about another business who had applied and had not gotten approval. Could someone fill me in on if there had been a previous request and the reason for the denial, if that happened? Maybe I misunderstood the comment, but
We only have the one low-speed vehicle company, Joyride. I believe previously even Mr. Winters operated one and might have pivoted to a different industry.
How many permits does Joyride have?
37.
Okay. Any idea whether they're using all 37? They are, okay.
We inspected, Mr. Rook and I went out and inspected low-speed vehicles in April. They certainly had 37 vehicles in operational form.
And they do
Okay.
They do tour and transportation as well, I believe.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah.
I think the commissioner was asking whether the very first gentleman who had the public comment was related to this company or not.
He's not.
He's not
And
with
so there was a period of time where they had an association. Sir, yeah. I understand that you're an attorney, and I know Mr. McNally. There's a proper forum for that discussion, and it's not in this room. It's probably across the street or in one of the general session courtrooms. But there was an association. He's not on the application. There was a contract, and he's no longer a part of that business. And I think that his comment is based out of spite. I feel like he's here to sandbag this business venture for personal reasons. But irrespective, he's not on the application, and he's no longer associated with Vintage Tour Nashville. But there is a relationship there. I'm not going to represent that there isn't.
Is this the same person that's listed under the rated drivers in the insurance policy?
No, he's not. He's not on the application.
No, he's not on the application.
No, he's not. I don't believe. Let me look at the application.
It lists a Ramez Saeed.
Yes, one of the drivers.
That's not the same person?
No.
Thank you.
Yeah. And as it relates to those drivers, they do have prior experience both driving Uber and Lyft. And I believe, didn't you drive the airports?
Terminals inside the airport.
Right. And so all of the drivers have experience as well as it relates to that. I feel like the application's in order. It was just continued for the commission to study the safetiness of the vehicle. I believe there had to be a safety study. And then they were also waiting for the downtown report to come out. And so the can's been kicked a few times. And I think that now it's ripe for the commission to decide.
Was there a safety study done? And do we have results of that safety study?
I don't want to speak for Mr. Rooker, who's not here today, but I believe there was a question of the commission back last September. How do we know these vehicles are safe if we haven't seen one? So that might be what they have responded to in ordering a vehicle and getting it here. He didn't invite me to go out and ride with him, so I can't imagine. I must have been out of work that day, or he would have brought me. But the other study he's referring to is the Connect Downtown study, and this was deferred pending the conclusion of that study and the results.
Right.
But we don't have a definitive safety on this particular vehicle, any results for that at this time?
We have the specs that we attach to the application, and it does have hydraulic brakes, a high-tension steel frame. It's got safety seats or safety harnesses. Permission to approach?
Looks safer than a golf cart. Do we regulate the drivers? So every driver will need a permit, just like a taxi driver or anybody else?
That's correct. And these vehicles, per state law, will go through the process to receive registration, a license plate, the same way Joyride's golf carts have done so.
Yeah, so we call them golf carts, but that's actually a little sloppy on our part because the TCA actually defines golf carts as a slower mode of vehicle than these low-speed vehicles. They're like explicitly different definitions in the state law. So you meet all the provisions in the state law in terms of operating a low-speed vehicle. Your vehicles do?
That's why we have purchased the vehicle and made sure that it met all the LSV requirements, including seat belts, horn, belts, headlights, slow-moving triangle for visuals. All the safety measures have been are in the vehicle, and Mr. Rooker has inspected these safety measures.
So did the state inspect your vehicle, though?
Yeah, it's registered with the state.
Okay.
The state of Tennessee.
I guess my question is there a reason that Director Rooker had a separate inspection of this vehicle?
The inspection.
We split duties. I'm sure he went out to inspect it on a day when I was handling some other issue. We don't go everywhere together. We go many places together, though.
The inspection was last year, December 6th of last year.
That explains it. I was on FMLA at the time, so I was not working. I feel better that he didn't take me.
Is there any reason why we wouldn't approve this?
We would have to find, though, that there's a certificate for public convenience and necessity. We still have the same standard to add more vehicles on the streets of Davidson County. So there's got to be a finding first of whether there's a public convenience and necessity for additional low-speed vehicles.
Could I ask an applicant a question? Is your business model dependent on exactly 20 vehicles? I mean, is there any particular reason you picked 20 rather than 10 or 30 or?
So Nashville is a growing city, and 20 vehicles is the number that we estimated to be good for to start off with in the downtown Nashville. And Joyride, there's another company under the LSV which has 40 permits, but something, like I said, completely different, whole vintage idea. And the whole Second Avenue, most of the Second Avenue has historic buildings. Most of downtown is all historic buildings. And we're gonna have drivers locally here from Nashville to take around the guests with family and friends, and we'll educate the guests.
Where's your pickup point and drop-off point for tours?
We have pickup and drop-off at Whitefront Garage. This is the start-off for the pickup. And
Where's that located, please?
205 Second Avenue North.
So down below this building here?
Yeah, it's very
Or a little further north of this building here?
Yes, sir.
Where the
4
stockyard
minutes.
used to be?
4 minutes, yes.
Mm-hmm. And then your anticipated route for tours is what?
So the anticipated routes, we do have specific routes, just as the LCV has lined up certain areas where we're permitted to drive
Right.
the vehicles. We are to follow these streets.
So back to my question, what is your anticipated route for a tour from the pickup point?
So for the pickup point, we have to the Country Music Hall of Fame, Ryman Auditorium, the Broadway streets, and hopefully Second Avenue once it reopens.
So downtown?
Downtown.
Very focused downtown.
Yes, sir.
So coming up Second Avenue and then all through downtown?
Yes, because we're only permitted to drive on certain streets.
Yeah.
Are you planning to operate 7 days a week?
7 days a week, yes. We want to follow all the rules the LCV has provided.
And I know that there was contemplation about weekend permitting. Did anything ever happen with that? I had to leave before okay. Well, you know, as of right now, of course, my client will take whatever you guys are willing to give in order to get the business model up and running. And the same thing's true with routes. If it becomes a thing where the density is so much where you guys want to maintain separate routes, we can discuss that as well. I think the greater concern is just being able to become a part of the mix, because without an entry point, there's no way to really have any competition in the marketplace, and that I think is the necessity portion of it. Public convenience too. As urban density increases, we're going to need more people, more ways of getting people to and fro outside of just everybody has their own vehicle, you know. And so I think that could also fit within that application standpoint.
And what better way to drive around downtown in a vintage vehicle, looking at vintage buildings and talking about the history of downtown. And the pictures that you're able to take with families and friends. And it's going to be a really good attraction for downtown Nashville.
Yeah.
I have a couple other questions. I may have missed this, what's the capacity in a vintage car?
So right now, the capacity is 5 passengers in the vehicle, because we have 5.
Is that including driver?
Including driver, yes.
So 4?
Yes.
4 passengers.
4 passengers plus driver?
Yes.
Okay. And then is there a BYOB element to this?
No drinking at all. We make sure that our target audience is mostly family and friends. We don't want any drinking or anything like that could impact the safety of people in the vehicle or outside the vehicle.
So if I'm getting a ride from you and I happen to have a beer, I can't drink it in your vehicle?
Enter the vehicle with a drink.
And Chair, if I may, your rules do preclude drinking on low-speed vehicles.
You may not have any client.
We already have a lot of drinking on the Broadway.
Maybe you'll get them when they first come down there.
We want families too. We want friends and families to, not just people over the age of 21.
Okay.
Mr. Schaefer, do you happen to know how many permits there are, how many joyride vehicles or other LSVs?
37 with just Joyride. The one
So-
company is approved currently.
So this would nearly double, not nearly, I mean, but it's a significant increase.
Really?
If it's appropriate, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion or whenever it is appropriate.
It's appropriate anytime to make a motion.
I'd move that we find there is a need for public convenience and necessity for 20 permits for low-speed vehicles.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion about the matter?
I'd like to say one thing. I came back from Havana recently where there are a lot of cars that look like that, but I can assure you, are not clean operating cars. But they do add to the, I don't know, nostalgia or the culture of the community. And we're not quite like Havana, obviously. But I think these are, I'd much rather have these kind of cars than golf carts.
I guess my only concern is whether or not low-speed vehicles are going to create a new opportunity for fun and excitement and joyride, sorry to use that terminology, or is it going to be problematic because it's a slower vehicle causing traffic issues?
Well, it's my understanding that I live here and I avoid downtown as much as possible. But when I do have to go down there, you're not moving any faster anyway. There's so much congestion going on that you're lucky to get above 15 miles per hour when you're near the downtown district just because of the number of people. And I think this gentleman made a really good point, is that you don't necessarily want people moving fast downtown with that number of people moving around, because the opportunity for accidents and pedestrians to get hurt increases significantly with speed. And so I think as it relates to that issue, it's not a bad thing that they're moving at a reasonable pace for that congested of an area. And I would urge you to consider that.
Until you're late for a show.
Well, prior planning, right?
Ride a bicycle, you get around a lot quicker. And these will be faster than a pedal tavern, right?
Yeah.
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 So.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yeah.
If the commission is going to move forward with the granting of the convenience and necessity of the license as well as 20 permits, might I request that we put the same requirement on them as we have on the ETVs and the other folks of not being able to operate in the downtown core area between the hours of 4 and 6, at least till we can get through. I know I had talked to Mr. Schaefer about coming back and changing the rule for the low speed vehicles across the board of 4 and 6, at least till we start getting some of the Connect Downtown implemented. They do create a problem with us being able to move traffic in and out. We do have a Class A office buildings that we have to service. We have people that are down here for things other than just entertainment. So it's trying to make both sides be able to get, it would be helpful if they were not operating in the immediate downtown core between the hours of 4 and 6 o'clock, like the ETVs and the pedal taverns and that. Thank you.
If I could
consideration.
I'm sorry. Could I ask a legal question? That would be a rules change, correct?
Yes, I was just about to
Okay.
raise the same point. Is like if you make a rule change, then you do need to set it for public hearing, and it was not noticed that way. Okay.
So we could voice our intention to do such a thing today and then actually do it at the next meeting. Okay.
Yeah,
I'd voice my intention to vote for it if and when we consider it.
With Vintage being it sounds like your business plan is more to be a tour, families move. Hold on, I don't need a comment. I'm making my observation. I think with the idea that they're going to be doing a tour, that restricting access during high traffic times in downtown Nashville makes a lot of sense. I don't think we did that initially with low-speed vehicles because we thought they were being used to move someone from point A immediately to point B. And you mentioned now that that Joyride is now doing tours as well. So, Mr. Schaefer, I would recommend we put on well, subject to the rest of the commissioner's thoughts, but I would recommend we put on the August meeting a consideration of restrictions for low-speed vehicles to not, well, don't we need to give time for to give notice to the public? We got a full month? Okay. Yeah, we can put it on the July meeting then. And I think we ought to consider the same thing for the morning segment that we normally have for other vehicles as well. I think it's 6 to 9 and, or
Yes,
not
sir.
before 9.
It was
and 4 to 6.
6:30 to 9 a.m. in the
Okay.
morning time.
Yeah, so if you can get that out to the public for public notice, and then we can have a public hearing on it in July. There are certain things that we have to actually have a public hearing on where there's rule changes is one of them. All right, there's been a motion, and I think there was a second. Any further comment?
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. This was with the public, this was to acknowledge that there was a need for these vehicles in an amount of 20. Is there a separate vote on whether to issue those all 20 ICE licenses? I'm just making sure I understand. Okay.
I have another question. We got newbie questions all day here. It said in the notes that it was deferred until after the Connect Downtown study was received by the TLC. Was there any input from the commission regarding how this, how the Connect Downtown study would figure into these permits?
Thank you. Diana Alarcon. In Connect Downtown, we brought back the results along with the recommendations. There's basically 3 phases that were established in Connect Downtown as far as making improvements or moving forward with changing the way we operate so that we could actually help move traffic in a different direction. I will be more than happy to make an appointment with y'all and sit down. It's a pretty hefty report. It was a 2-year process for us to get that information. There's a lot of information, but we did provide on several occasions to this board where our KCI, which was our traffic specialist on the study, had brought in recommendations of what that number should be of slow-moving vehicles. And based on that number, until we put some of these recommendations in place, that was topping out at 70 permits overall for ETVs, for the slow-moving vehicles, for the pedal taverns. They were all affecting the ability for the traffic to be moving in a reasonable speed. And this was also based on being able to get transit out of downtown as well. We do feel phase 1 is going to open up some opportunities. So we had asked, let us do phase 1, do evaluation, bring it back to this board. And then that way, because we feel like through phase 1, the items that we are actually going to implement are going to make a big difference in how we are able to move folks. And then from that, we'll do the evaluation and then be able to make a recommendation about moving forward, whether we should slow down or not. I mean, keep the number or add numbers or whatever. So that right now they're topped off at the 90 for the ETVs and the sightseeing, 91, excuse me. And then we are at 22 or 26 for the pedal taverns. I think it's 26. And then we've had the 37 for the slow moving vehicles. But we didn't decipher the difference between whether it was an ETV, a pedal tavern, or a taxi, because they all move relatively slow. So they were just looked at as a big group.
So you're saying that all of the different vehicles were categorized as slow-moving vehicles?
Yes, ma'am.
And the recommendation was 70?
It showed that it started creating traffic issues where people were building up time, and that at the number of 70, that's when it starts slowing everybody down. And then where it starts breaking the network system was at 35. And that's what it showed.
And that study, was that based on hard data or was it a simulation?
It was based on the data that was collected, and what they did is, based on the data that was collected of the number of vehicles that are moving in the downtown core, they would take one of those vehicles and put it in as a slow-moving vehicle, and then add another one, and then add another one, and then add another one, then add another one, and that's where they made the determination. So it was based on true data that was collected, but it varied the number of slow-moving vehicles that would actually be in the network moving at that time.
But can you tell us at any given time, you actually collected data at, say, 5 p.m. on a Thursday, how many vehicles, permitted vehicles were operating at that particular time?
You know what? Yes, sir, we did do that. We did that, and I was supposed to report that back in
That's
the month,
correct.
and I was not here, so I apologize. But yes, I do have that data. I'm sorry. Now that I think about it, we did not bring it back to the board because we did do a real-time data collection.
And how did you collect it?
We actually did it with camera.
No drones?
No drones. We did it with cameras.
It's my understanding from the last meeting too that there's no differentiation at all between the, like, if you have somebody moving at like 7 miles an hour on a pedal tavern versus what we have here is, you know, a vehicle that can operate up to almost the speed limit, 25 miles an hour. And so I don't think that the congestion concern as it relates to this particular vehicle or this fleet of vehicles, if approved, is the same as what is anticipated with an ETV or pedal tavern. And I don't think that it was addressed in the models that I saw that were presented in the last meeting last month. I think that might be a misnomer to characterize this particular business model within that same concern. And again, that's a concentration in one unique area of Nashville as opposed to a wider breadth of which can be serviced with this business model.
And the slow-moving vehicle is completely different than the LSV since we're able to go to 25 miles per hour. It's not like a vehicle that's driving 5 miles per hour or 10 miles per hour. It would not impede traffic.
Did you rerun the simulation based on the data you collected?
Yes, sir. The data that was collected over a year period, they took different days, points, seasons, and what they would do is they would plug in at one at a time a slow-moving vehicle to see when the network system would start breaking. And that's why we knew the system came down and was really broken at the number of 35, and it started breaking at the number of 70. So that's when it starts slowing it down. And there were many things, and we could not decipher between what the vehicle was, so everything was put together. But we knew that the entertainment vehicles move slow. We know that the pedal taverns move slow, and we know that the joyride tours move very slow as well. So with those numbers, as they threw them in, that's where they determined what makes the system start getting clogged and then what breaks the system. And that's where the numbers came from. And that was shared with the board.
Can you share
No, it
what?
wasn't.
Yes, it was.
When?
It was shared twice with the board.
Based on hard data?
On hard data. It always was based on hard data.
You're not, well, my definition of hard data is different.
Yes, sir.
than
I
yours.
understand that. But it was based on the data that was collected of what is happening on the roadway network.
No, it wasn't. No.
Director, could you share with me what the speed definition of low-speed vehicles is?
I believe a low speed, I'm going to let Teresa do that.
So just to be clear, these are two different terms. So low-speed vehicle is actually, it just means the type of vehicle that we're talking about, the joyride and this new applicant would propose to drive. And they can be electric or motorized, and they have a required speed parameter of between a low of 20 miles per hour and a high of 25. So if you go slower than that, you actually are in the category of a golf cart. And if you go faster than that, then I think the state puts you in the category of a medium speed vehicle, which I think are like ATVs, basically. But for the purposes of the study, I think the study used the term slow moving vehicle. And so that's not a state statutory defined term. That's just for the purposes of the study.
And it wouldn't be the best option to compare, say, LSV to SLV, a slow-moving vehicle, since they for the downtown partnership, the projection that they projected was labeled under one, which was SLV, slow-moving vehicle, which is hard to measure whether this vehicle is slowing down traffic or not, since they're all labeled under one category.
Yeah.
Can you remind me the speed of your vehicle?
Max 25, no lower than 20 miles per hour.
Yeah.
No, if your vehicle can't go higher than 25 miles an hour?
Yes.
It's not capable of
It's
going
not.
higher than 25 miles an hour? Okay.
It's actually not even allowed to.
Yeah.
And it's an electric vehicle, very eco-friendly for the community. There's no gas or anything like that. That's why our biggest part of the vehicle is that it is electric, and we want to grow in this capacity for electric vehicles.
The reason why I asked for the point of order earlier is because, and it's clear that there's one operator right now. It does seem unfair that there's only one operator and there's not competition out there with these other folks. So I'd be inclined to, to approve that, but I have concerns with adding to 20 from the start to 40 of the, whatever the number is. It seems like a big jump in these vehicles, and I've appreciated, as someone who works downtown, the fewer number of joyride from where they were, and so I'm not in a hurry to add 50%, whatever it is, more. I'm bad at math, but anyway, I just wanted to share that with my friends here as we get prepared to vote. It seems.
I would point out, and I'm sure the chair will agree, any motion could be amended.
And what I've observed over time on this is that if you look at Connect Downtown study, they would encourage us not to add any more vehicles, period, downtown.
Yeah.
Your position is that our low-speed vehicles are not the same as slow-moving vehicles, and that you're not going to impede traffic further with additional low-speed vehicles that can go 25 miles per hour on the streets. So I think that kind of summarizes a little bit of the balance here that we're looking at, along with the position of necessity for competition in the low-speed vehicle market in downtown Nashville. I will say I'm pleased to see that you are coming up with a low-speed vehicle that I think would be more attractive downtown Nashville than some of the joyride vehicles I've seen. And that's I also recognize the benefit joyride has given to this community over times of commuting people from one place to another. I almost see your vehicle kind of similar to the horse-drawn carriages.
Yeah.
More, but they go even slower. So don't hold me to that.
Yeah.
So
for the study, as it was mentioned too.
Yeah.
All right. Well, there's been. I'm sorry. What?
I left him out as a slow-moving vehicle.
You did. All right. There was a motion by Commissioner Rogers about finding a certificate of public convenience and necessity for 20 low-speed vehicles. There's been a suggestion of amending that motion. Do I hear an amended motion at all?
I would like to amend that motion to 10 vehicles as opposed to 20.
Second.
All right. I think Mr. Rogers, Commissioner Rogers, got his second in first, but just then it's just for.
I'll yield.
Okay. All right. Well then, Commissioner Claver will have.
Claver.
I'm sorry. Claver will have the second on that motion. Is there any further discussion on this issue? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, so we have a certificate of public convenience and necessity for 10 additional vehicles. Is there a motion to approve Vintage National Tours application and to permit them 10 vehicles? Second. There's a motion on the floor and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Best of
Thank
luck to
you.
You're welcome.
Have a good afternoon. May we be excused?
Yeah, of course. This is not court.
I'm just used to that.
And Mr. Schaefer. Oh, wait. That's all right. Just I want to make sure that we get on the agenda for July consideration about the restrictions on operating times.
We'll have it on there. Yes, sir.
All right. Next on our agenda is the entertainment transportation issues, and there's a public hearing regarding the TLC rules and procedures, Section 803. Ms. Castellanos, did you have something you wanted to share with us on that?
Yes. So this is a public hearing, as I understand, correct? So people should have an opportunity to speak on this. But what is proposed is to take Rule 803E, which TD currently has posted on the screen, and delete from it, or maybe I think it would just be deleting Section E in its entirety. And basically what Section E does is E places a requirement on the companies that if they allow the consumption of alcoholic beverages on their vehicles, that they shall provide liquor liability insurance. And the reason, circumstances have kind of changed from what we initially thought when this rule was originally introduced by the TLC. We had thought, based on inquiries that were made at that time, that there was more than one insurer who would be willing to provide this type of insurance for this type of vehicle. And over time, that it's come to be clear that there's not, that there's only one company willing to provide this type of insurance, and because of that, it's been financially problematic for the companies. And so, given that kind of market reality, we would recommend at this point that you delete this rule from the rules of the TLC.
In fact, I'd go so far to say that we were informed that there would be a marketable, that this insurance would be in the market and available. And as I understand from what you're saying, that's not true.
Yeah, I think we maybe made that assumption in part because the pedal taverns were able to get similar insurance for their vehicles, and so we just kind of assumed it would work with motor vehicles as well. And our director of insurance may have talked to a couple of agents and who were like, yeah, sure, probably somebody can write that for you. And as it has turned out, there's only one company willing to underwrite that.
And aren't they establishing some conditions for underwriting it, that someone has to move all of their insurance over to them?
I have heard that anecdotally.
Okay. All right. I'll now open the meeting up to the public for a hearing on this matter. Does anybody want to speak on this question? Mr. Birch. All right. Just to identify yourself for the record, please.
That's right. Michael Winters, Nashville Tractor. Obviously, I concur that needs to be deleted, and there's a couple reasons why. If I open a bar and serve beer, I don't need liquor liability insurance. We all carry beer permits. None of us carry liquor permits. So liquor liability insurance is for a bar that carries liquor. So number one, that's why you can't get it, because we're not a bar that sells beer. Some of the people that were able to acquire some simulation of this insurance is because they owned a bar and they could then kind of carry that insurance over to their vehicle. That's how that works. So if you didn't own a bar that served liquor, trying to get a liquor liability policy to then ride on your vehicle was impossible. So in our case, it was about $350,000 to come up with a policy that really covered nothing because we didn't sell liquor anyway. And as we talked about in the first part of this meeting, the TLC regulates 8% and under. You don't regulate liquor. You don't regulate anything that this insurance in theory covers. So that's why I'm for removing it, because it probably shouldn't have been there to begin with.
Thank you. Anybody else? All right, I'm going to close. Please identify yourself.
Yes, sir. Ben Eagles, here representing Greater Nashville Hospitality Association. While we support the contributions of sightseeing tours to the hospitality experience in Nashville and indeed in cities around the world, we have concerns and about allowing holders of sightseeing permits to transition to ETV permits because it would undo this commission's very difficult and recent work to cap the number of ETVs on our downtown streets. We believe the applicants knew when they originally applied if they truly operated ETVs rather than sightseeing. Moreover, allowing the swapping of permit types undermines this commission's judgment during the original application process. On what grounds would the standard of public necessity and convenience not have been met originally when the commission denied numerous requests for ETV permits, but be satisfied now only a short time later?
Excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Are you addressing the consideration of the additional permits and permit swaps?
I must admit that I am.
Okay. You may be a step ahead of yourself, but I'll let you go ahead and
finish. I fear
finish
that there wasn't going to be another public comment for that.
Oh, go ahead and finish then.
Thanks, sir. NDOT's recommendations are based solely on traffic flow, but this commission has and can consider other factors. We fear that setting this precedent would open the door for more permit swaps and also legal challenges to this commission's original permit application process. We also urge the commission to consider the adverse quality of life effects of alcohol, including safety and noise that come with ATVs. So we'd urge you to not approve the swaps of permits. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. All right, going back to, is there anybody else that would like to comment about our consideration of ET Rule 803E? Yes, sir. And as I've said to everybody else, please identify yourself.
Hello, Commissioner Patrick Kludek with Upstage Party Bus. In reference to what Mr. Winter said, I do not own a brick and mortar. I rent from a spot, basically. And that being said, I cannot obtain liquor liability. So that's my comment.
Thank you, sir. All right, I'm going to close the public hearing. Commissioners, any discussions about the consideration of Metro Legal's recommendation to dispense with ET Rule 803E, which requires liquor liability insurance?
Given the update that we've received from legal, I would make a motion that we eliminate or strike or whatever the proper motion is. Eliminate 803E with
Amend
respect
section 803 to delete subsection E thereof.
That sounds like a great motion to me. We'll do that.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
All right, there's a motion on the table to amend Rule 803 to delete subsection E. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Next up for consideration is the additional permits and permit swaps. Mr. Schaefer?
Yes, Mr. Chair. At the marathon meeting in May, we held the annual hearing for the entertainment transportation vehicles, and the 91 permits were approved for another year as is. There was another motion from the commission to try to set a date for a special meeting to consider permit swaps and additional permits perhaps granted only for weekends. Mr. Rooker and I tried to schedule a date with the room and with Metro Nashville Network and with a quorum, and we're unable to schedule a special called meeting for that purpose, so it has appeared on today's agenda. I'll look to Teresa Costonis, our legal advisor, about the viability of the weekend-only permits, and then we can go from there.
So the commission does have the ability to make regulations about routes, zones, and hours of operation for a number of the different types of vehicles that it regulates, including ATVs. Hang on one second. In general, when we have done this, like, for example, the 4 to 6 prohibition on operation or before 9 o'clock or after 11 p.m., that applies to all of the permittees equally. So basically what I think is being proposed in terms of the weekend only operation is like a concept where some vehicles would, I guess, allow there to be a condition placed on their permit that they would only operate in zones that do not, that they would only operate on weekends as opposed to on weekdays to maybe have less of an impact on weekday traffic. And so, I mean, like I said, it is not how we have implemented that rule in the past. We did have a, sorry, let me find it. Hang on 1 second. Oops, too far. Operating area. So it says, this is this is actually code section 677.320. Entertainment transportation vehicles shall operate, and remember, seated sightseeing vehicles is actually a subset of entertainment transportation vehicles. So entertainment transportation vehicles includes everyone. Well, everyone who is an ET. Shall operate upon the streets within the metropolitan area on routes or zones and within hours of operation established by the MTLC or its staff. Any deviation from these approved routes, zones, or hours of operation, except for deviations caused by traffic accidents, must be approved by the MTLC or its staff. Any approved deviation must be reported to the TLC or the TLC director, staff prior to beginning of operations. For the purposes of this section, the term operate shall mean when the entertainment transportation vehicle is transporting passengers and does not include when the driver or employee is operating the transportation vehicle for service repair or when driving to or returning from its point of origin or final destination without passengers. So, like I said, we've never really broken that up. However, at the last meeting in May, the marathon that TD referred to, this commission did look at the concept of conditionally permitting only certain vehicles to only use certain routes and zones. So outside of the downtown area, because the Downtown Connect study focused on the downtown area, that is where we have the bulk of the congestion. There were companies that wished to operate between the prohibited hours of 4 to 6, but do that outside of the congested areas and propose other routes for review and approval by traffic engineers, the Traffic and Parking Commission, and the TLC, and the NDOT staff who service both. So basically, that may set sort of a precedent that you can do this. But like I said, previously we've always limited it to just one rule for everybody, like the 4 to 6. So now you can get out of the 4 to 6 if you operate in other zones or routes outside of the downtown area that are approved. And so if you operate weekend only, if that's your hours of operation, like I said, I think it would effectively be a condition on your permit that you are accepting, if you are the applicant, that you're getting a permit, but it's going to be limited to the routes and zones. And it's possible to say that that maybe really falls a little bit outside of what's contemplated in section 677.320. It really is pretty much just the straightforward statement. Entertainment transportation vehicles shall operate upon the streets within the metropolitan area on routes or zones and within hours of operation established by the MTLC or its staff. So basically, that's pretty broad. So I think maybe you could do it, but there it is up on the screen if you need to see. 672.320 320, the one at the top, yeah, where where TD is indicating with the cursor. So that's your authority to do that. Now, how you've actually exercised that authority, so far, I mean, we have, as we stated, as far as the hours of operation, we've exercised that authority with regard to the before 9 and 4 to 6 and after 11, with regard to routes and zones. In the ET context, I don't know that we've really prohibited any specific areas or blessed any particular routes or zones either. So, I mean, certainly, like if we end up approving companies to operate on unusual routes and zones during the 4 to 6 hours, as was approved by the commission last month, then we will start doing that with some routes and zones for that purpose. So basically what I'm saying is I don't think it's really clear. We have sort of some precedent that you can do this. And the code section is worded really broadly. So I think you can probably do it. But I do think that there would have to be an element of the applicant kind of willingly accepting the condition on their permit. Like that they would come before you and say, I am applying for a permit, but I am voluntarily limiting myself to a permit that is conditioned to only operate on weekends.
It's all right. It's a for sure maybe.
So what we're saying is that we might have the authority to be able to grant permits that are on the weekends only and in specific areas, but it would be better if the person was acquiescing to that condition when they were seeking the permit.
I think so, exactly.
Otherwise, right now, we have 91 ETs, and they are not zoned to any particular, they're not prohibited from any particular spot, and they're prohibited from operating from 6:30 to 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, there are some, isn't there some language about going past schools or something like that, or churches?
Yeah.
The other rule I'm thinking of is loading and unloading only on private property rather than in loading zones.
And they're prohibited from 6:30 to 9 and 4 to 6.
I believe it's any time between 11 p.m. and 9 a.m. I believe it's encompassing all of that time frame. They cannot operate, and then 4 to 6, except on approved routes outside of that downtown core, and a few routes have been approved.
And as of right now, today, we don't have to take any action because there's no application before us right now for a weekend permit.
What we do have is the applicants from the annual hearing. There were some who requested no change, some requested additional permits, additional vehicles, and some requested a trade. I currently have 2 ETs and 1 sightseeing. I'd like it just to be 3 ETs. So those 3 types of applications we saw.
Are they on the agenda today?
We've listed it as consideration of additional permits and permit swaps.
All right, for each of those. Okay. Can you go through and identify who it is that's asking for the additional permits and for conditioned permits?
So I just put all 27 companies back in. Big Drag Bus requested no change. Big Green Tractor Tours requested 3 additional ET permits. Would you like me to go through them all or call them as they go?
Well, what I'm asking is, what do we need to do today on this issue?
So you have previously made a finding as to public convenience and necessity with regard to the number of ETs, and that finding has been limiting it to 35 to 70 based on data from the Downtown Connect study. And so I I think there's an argument to be made that if you're outside of the area of the study, perhaps that limitation is less applicable. So I don't know to what degree limiting operation to weekends would be helpful in terms of like lessening traffic congestion. I'd defer to NDOT on that. But, you know, if they can make arguments that they can like operate new permits in areas like Centennial Park or East Nashville or the Gulch or whatever. Well, the Gulch is included in Downtown Connect, isn't it?
If I may, Mr. Chair. When we had some of the industry meetings, there were two areas that came up for consideration that has brought this forward. There is some folks that are currently operating ETV under an ETV permit, but basically they only operate really on the weekend. So from Friday evening, Saturday, and Sunday. So they said if we could operate, just get a weekend permit, we do not need an ETV because we're not operating anyway Monday, 7 days a week. So that's where the idea of the weekend permit came up. Then there was also the conversation about, there were some operators who said, I don't even operate in the downtown. I don't even come into the downtown. I operate to the outside area. So that's where we said, well, maybe we can create zones. So one zone says you're in the downtown, another zone would be outside the downtown, sort of kind of that concept. And then you could actually pick up a certain number of permits based on that zone. And so there were some folks that were willing to say, I'm not operating downtown, but I am operating outside. So that would give us a little bit of clarification of exactly how many folks are actually operating in the downtown core as part of Connect Downtown. And so that's how the conversation came about.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, just in terms of the process question you were asking also. So you all have already made that finding of 35 to 70. So I guess what we might be doing today is seeing whether the commission would like to reconsider that finding and see if people who want to apply for to operate only in certain hours or only on certain routes and zones and would voluntarily accept that limitation on their permit or their certificate, whether they would be able to make a case that there is, in fact, a public convenience and necessity served by them being allowed to operate those more limited hours or in those more limited routes and zones. And right now, you do currently have already 91 permits, ETV permits approved. 50 seated sightseeing videos and 41 of the regular party bus type ETs. And so again, it's kind of a question of like, can they make a case that there's a public necessity for more of these, which seems hard to do when you're at 91 and you have a range of 35 to 70? Or would these extenuating factors be enough to create sort of a limited additional public necessity and convenience that could be served? So it's kind of a tricky question, I guess, but it's up to the applicants to establish that there is a public convenience and necessity for the additional permits.
So I'm back to my question. Are we considering applications right now? Is that what we are doing today?
If it pleases the commission to consider additional applications, all the applications were approved as is. The instruction in the motion from the commission was to schedule a special called meeting where companies might have the opportunity to swap, if allowed, perhaps a sightseeing for an ET or any additional permits that were requested through their application. So if the commission would like to consider additional applicants or swaps, that is this agenda item since we were not able to schedule the special called meeting.
How many applications and swaps are we talking about today?
I've got a few here as we go through. For instance, Extreme Experience, they have one ET and one seated sightseeing. They would like that swap
How
to just
many
two
companies have got applications that or want to be considered? It's that many, huh?
I count 13.
13.
Companies
Okay.
or permit additions?
Companies are certificate holders, so they have some existing permits, and they are arguing that they should have additional vehicles added to their fleet. Do we have any just new certificate requests, TD?
We had no new applicants. They were all existing companies. And Commissioner Claver's correct. It's 13. It would be either new or swaps, that number 13.
Additional permits or swaps?
Correct.
So we'd be going from 91 to 103, 104.
Well, I mean, you'd have to amend your existing finding of convenience and necessity in some way before you can go above the 70, really, even though we're already above the 70 at 91 because state law didn't allow us to diminish it.
If I may, Mr. Chair, at this time, I would ask, let us get through phase 1 of Connect Downtown, and hopefully then that would be, I think we would be able to provide some really good direction on what the network would be able to continue to support or even improve on supporting. But I think there are some folks in here where they're asking maybe instead of having two sightseeing and ETV, they'd rather have 2 ETVs. And that's not necessarily going to put us any higher. They're just moving it from being a sightseeing or ETV so it acts in a different capacity. And I believe there's one company that is actually looking to give back their ETV and in exchange would like to get a permit for a pedal carriage. I said that terminology correct. Yay.
So I think that one cannot be done legally.
They would just have to, we would have to give it out through a regular public hearing.
Yes, they would have to apply during the...
Thank you.
So what is the impact of doing this and what is the impact of not doing it?
Yeah, if you take no action, the companies will continue to operate for another year with the 91 permits that are allotted to the 27 companies. There will be no change. If you take action to potentially add permits, the number on the street would increase.
But you would have to change the range.
There would be a motion there to change the range that is acceptable from this commission. And then the permit swaps, the implication would be that a company who currently has, and that's the only way swaps have been requested, going from seated sightseeing to ET, then they would be allowed to serve alcohol, to be standing, all of the regulations that go with ET that don't apply to seated sightseeing.
And we did talk about one of the most important distinctions there is one that, like the liquor liability insurance, is currently stayed due to pending litigation, and that's the enclosure requirement. So that's kind of the single biggest distinction between SSVs or seated sightseeing vehicles and regular ETVs. The regular ETVs have to be enclosed according to what the rules say now, although the enforcement of that is stayed by the court order. And the seated sightseeing vehicles are allowed to be open air on top. We don't know how that litigation will go or how that matter will end up. But I think if you're asking people if they're wanting to swap from SSV to ETV, you might want to ask them that should that stay be lifted and that rule go into enforce, are they prepared to comply with that and enclose their vehicles?
For a little if I could just add a little background, there's some confusion. There may be some confusion for the new commissioners about the situation. We had a hearing after we got the Connect Downtown. We had a hearing on determination of what would be in the public's best interest, just to use a simple language. And we set up for a number of ETs, and we set up a number between 35 and 70 based on the data from, or the conclusions from the Connect Downtown. 35 is when it started to get bad. 70 was when it started to break. And so we set up a range of 35 to 70. However, there were 91 permits that were already in effect. And we were going to have to evaluate whether we were going to prune some of those down to the number, at least down to 70 or not. But then the state came in and set a law that said you can't take somebody's permit away unless you can show that there was some malfeasance. I think that's a short way of saying it. So so I guess last May they approved the 91 again for another year. I missed last month's meeting, that marathon meeting that's been described. But so that's why we've made a finding of public necessity and convenience of 35 to 70, but we have 91. But we approved 91 in May to be on the streets. So, and I think I'm hearing from NDOT that you would really like, before any additional permits are granted, like to see phase 1 of the study go into effect and reevaluate whether more could go on the streets or not go on the streets. But we might be able to consider today the swapping of a sightseeing vehicle for a ET or ET for sightseeing. Is it? No request to go from a
consider it if
from
anyone
an entertainment vehicle to a sightseeing. Does that give us an indication of what the demand is out there for? Huh? Okay.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Didn't we have it, I think only one company that wanted an additional touring application? I think if I remember correctly, and I can't remember which company, had 2 touring permits currently and one additional one. So he doesn't have anything to swap. Redneck, yeah. That's it. So, because quite frankly, I remember thinking after the meeting that if anybody deserved it, maybe it was him. Should I say that probably?
I have a question for Chair McNally.
Yeah, please.
You mentioned malfeasance in your comments. Is there a way of tracking that, or how do we? This is a newbie question. I was elected on Tuesday, found out about this meeting yesterday, and I'm here today. So if you'll all pardon my point of order questions.
Yeah, Mr. Schaefer, Ms. Alicorn, would you describe how many inspectors we have out there and what they're doing and our efforts at enforcing the regulations?
I don't work directly with the inspectors, but I believe 25 is the number, and that's been something we've been getting staffed up. Those inspectors are responsible for everything that moves downtown, all 9 sections of the TLC, as well as enforcing parking violations as well. To answer the question, I think the process that we have determined that will go into place through discussions with NDOT leadership and Metro Legal is at the site of a first violation to send a letter warning the company of what they are violating, to then move forward with citations. And at the point of time that a citation is adjudicated as guilty or a default judgment against them, they are found to be liable for that violation. I think at a point of 3 violations, we would seek a disciplinary hearing before this board.
Have there been any disciplinary hearings?
Oh, yeah.
There have not at this point, no.
And how far back does the data go for tracking the violations?
We have data that goes back over a year. However, we've started tracking for the disciplinary with the new state law. We started tracking from that date moving forward. So as Mr. Schaefer had mentioned, we actually, the first is a phone call saying, hey, we received this report, we verified it, you're in violation of this, and it's documented. The second one is a letter that they received saying, hey, you've been caught again, we verified it, it's actually occurred, this is your letter of notice. Third strike would be the citation. That gets adjudicated. We would then actually bring that disciplinary, well, actually the citation would be issued before it's adjudicated because that can take quite a while to go before the system. We would bring all of that before this board for disciplinary action consideration because they were given 3 opportunities and they have not changed their behavior. So we are now collecting all of that data. So Ricky has been, Mr. Broker, has been making those phone calls to folks, sending out the letters that were appropriate, and citations are being issued accordingly. So we anticipate that there will be some disciplinaries that we'll bring before y'all in the relatively future.
Does this board see anything before the 3rd strike?
We have not, at this point, really have shared that, have brought anything before you on that third strike, but just the third strike we felt would be determined, would give them an opportunity to get it corrected. They do have new drivers. That person isn't aware. You know, there are circumstances that kind of lead. So we wanted to try to build out some fairness in this, that it wouldn't be they are disciplined and they come straight before y'all. So we really wanted to kind of give them some opportunities to have corrective action versus just coming in and saying, hey, y'all have totally violated this rule. And it is all rules that they have to apply to.
As someone who has a staff and operates a company, I understand that. I think that's fair. Just as a comment, again, this is sort of day 3 for me, so I don't feel like I have enough information to make to have a vote on this until I'd like to see some of that information, if whatever is available to the board. And I'd also like to review the Connect Downtown study before making having a vote on this issue.
As you might expect, I feel the exact same way. I feel unprepared to make a decision that might impact someone's business without being able to review that information, and so I would prefer that we delay this consideration for the additional licenses today.
I think I feel the same way, but could I make a motion we defer this issue? Is it better to have a special meeting, or, I mean, this could go on forever. I don't want that to happen. What was the problem?
The room, Metro Nashville network schedule, and then quorum is
all of the above.
Trying to find a date that works for everybody, date and a time.
Yeah.
But you had the annual hearing on the applications for ET and sightseeing vehicles, and that's done. This is now consideration of additional applications and or swapping. Isn't that supposed to occur during the annual meeting?
It was an 8-hour
okay.
meeting.
All
I think
right,
the commission was ready to move along.
All right. So they did make a motion to defer it to another, okay.
And the motion specifically was a special called meeting, which we were not able to hold, so we put it on today's agenda.
All right. There's been, go ahead.
I was just going to make a comment that part of this evaluation and consideration needs to be take into consideration that 35 to 70 kind of parameter that we put in place, because we already have exceeded that. If we're going to go further down that road, then I think we need to start there.
Yeah, I think as Mr. Castone has pointed out, there would first have to be a motion passed to reevaluate the decision on the public necessity and convenience for 35 to 70, and then go into the specific applications. But right now, I'm hearing at least from 3 commissioners that they are not prepared to act on this matter and need a little more time to evaluate information that is available, and that it might be better to move this to a special meeting or get it on the agenda for a monthly meeting that is not overly crowded or already filled with a lot of agenda items.
Do we still have those? That was the last time we had a quick meeting. Do you have any idea what next month is like? I mean,
There are no annual meetings in July, so it might be a good time. We do have low speed and pedal vehicles in August, so.
well, I move we defer the issue till the July meeting.
Second.
There's a motion and a second. Any further discussion on the matter? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next on our agenda is Emergency Wrecker and Towing Services Annual Hearing. Mr. Mitchell, is that what you want to speak about? Yes. All right. And Mr. Schaefer, would you share with us a little bit about, or, enlighten everybody about the annual meeting for wreckers, towers?
This is the annual hearing for the emergency record zone assignments. That the assignments are before you on the screen. There is a new application from STR Towing.
Before you go there, how about just share with a little bit about record zones and the different types of records that we have and that we regulate, okay? The non-consent versus consent, things of that nature, okay?
Ms. Casonas, are you a little more familiar with the types of records in this category?
So I think what the chair
you.
is getting at is that there's basically 3 different levels of permits. I'm sure Mr. Mitchell could probably say this better than I could. But
why don't we let Mr. Mitchell tell us about that? Because, Mr. Mitchell, would you just please identify yourself and the company you're with? I've seen you many, many years now, and I really appreciate you being here today. But we have some new commissioners, and please tell us about records in Davidson County.
Basically, records are, we have the heavy duty, which is the large records that do the 18-wheelers and dump trucks and stuff of that nature. Then we have rollbacks, which are basically your general tow truck that does all your automobiles and light equipment. And then we have, of course, what we call snatch trucks or a single wheel rear truck that does light duty towing. And those are your basic records that we do. Most of the records that are used in the zones are the rollback records, which is a 21-foot rollback.
can I clarify from like a Mr. Mitchell has the technical perspective. From a regulatory perspective, I think you have the first class, the easiest kind of record permit or license to get, which is just to be able to do contract tows, like you were saying, like the vehicle that can, the tow truck that can tow a single vehicle. Usually, you know, they just have one truck, they're a small operation, and they're only going to do those contracted tows.
So
now,
if I break down on the side of the road, that's the ones I'm calling first, right?
well, that gets into our emergency map. I'm getting there. I'm getting there.
All right.
So the second kind is the non-consent tows. So that's where, like, say you own a parking lot, and you want to be able to tow people who park there who are not your customers, or, you know, who are not your employees, or whatever prescription you have, and you put like warning sign in your parking lot saying, you know, this company will tow you if you park in our lot. The companies that can service those requests have like a little bit of a higher standard. I think both certainly under Metro Code, but I think maybe under state law as well, because non-consent tows are basically when you are towing someone's vehicle without the consent of the owner of that vehicle. You do have to get the consent of the property owner where the vehicle is located, or their employee or designee or whatever. But the third category, the most strictly regulated, is the emergency wreckers. And the emergency wreckers are kind of special, and that's when if you have a wreck on the road, you know, in some kind of an emergency situation, and police call for a wrecker. If you see the map on the screen over there, and I think you may have a copy in front of you as well, that is that's a picture of Davidson County divided into zones, and each of those colored zones belongs to a specific company that is qualified to do emergency wrecker service. And so that's provided for in that part of the code, is that it's part of the commission's responsibility to divide up the county in a way, again, that best meets public needs and public safety, and kind of pretty evenly, as evenly as possible, divides the county up between those various companies that are able to provide this level of tow service, emergency wrecker service operations, who have the license to qualify to do that. Like, again, that's the highest qualification.
High standards, yeah. Mr. Sheffer, would you enlighten us on the first agenda on the annual hearing, please? Current emergency.
Yeah, so the current emergency record zone assignment is written there. Those are the companies that currently have a zone assigned to them. And then today, for the benefit of the new commissioners for the first time in about a decade, we do have a new application from an emergency record looking to see if a zone is available or to see if zones could be altered. And so that's the reason here for our public hearing, annual hearing today.
Thank you. And Mr. Mitchell, you had said you wanted to speak during the public part of the hearing.
Yes, sir. Of course, the first thing I'd like to thank the commission for awarding the zone to us. We appreciated the opportunity to operate the zone and would appreciate the opportunity to continue operating the zone. I think I speak for all the zone operators in Nashville. We have absolutely the best, most experienced operators that we've ever had now. You know, as the president of the Davidson County Emergency Towing Association, we occasionally have meetings. We haven't had to have a meeting, and I can't remember when, because we just have not had any problems. They work together very well. These owner-operators have invested a tremendous amount of time and money and experience in training and purchasing the equipment to fulfill the needs of these zones. And at this time, I would request that zones be awarded as are and without any changes.
Thank you, sir. Is a representative from STR Towing and Recovery here? Do me a favor and identify yourself and then tell us about your application.
My name is John Kuntz. I am the owner of STR Towing and Recovery. We have a fantastic group of folks on our team that have hundreds of years of experience among all of them. And I first want to talk about some statistics that we drew from the Department of Homeland Security website regarding accidents. First off, the data that we are able to get is from January 1st, 2022 to June 19th, 2024. There have been 5,050 accidents involving a commercial motor vehicle in Davidson County during that time period. Over the time period of 2022 to 2024, FMCSA reportable, which is trucking related accidents in 2022, there were 524, 2023, 473, and so far in this year alone is 211. Rollover accidents, which are the ones that shut the interstate down for hours and hours. 2022, there were 37. 2023, there were 29. 2024 so far this year has been 14. Since 2013, which was the last year that anybody had applied for a new zone in Metro Nashville, there's been a 25% increase in our population. We all know that the traffic patterns of Nashville are intense, and they've gotten worse over the last 10 years. So many accidents, so much frustrations. Our primary focus as a company has been the commercial motor vehicle accident. We do not have interest at this time getting a light duty zone. There are currently 7 record services on the Metro rotation that do not offer heavy duty wrecker service. So there are two owners that cover the entire Metro Nashville market for all commercial motor vehicle accidents, and through their different companies that they own. And so I am proposing that we use our facility, our lot that we have on Fessler's Lane in Nashville Industrial District, as a commercial motor vehicle only, so heavy duty recovery, heavy duty accident only, to overlay the 7 zone companies that do not have heavy-duty wreckers. Currently, the two men that own the other wrecker services that do have heavy-duty wreckers are providing that overlay over the light-duty companies, the seven existing light-duty companies. So I believe that with the accident count of commercial motor vehicles in our city, the exceeding amount of traffic on a daily basis, I believe that we're due, and we have a significant investment in equipment outside of wreckers. Wreckers are nearly $1 million for one of them, the big ones. So we have supporting equipment besides wreckers that are required for some of these big cargo cleanups and hauling away the trash that comes out of these trailers. And so that is our proposal, not to redivide the zones for all the light duty guys. Nobody likes change but a wet baby. And we are not trying to change this service that all these folks have spent years doing. We are not trying to take anything from anybody other than providing prompt time of arrival and ultimately prompt time of scene clearance, especially for the commercial motor vehicle accidents.
Mr. Schaefer, I may be putting you on the spot because it's usually something that Mr. Fields or Mr. Rooker would be addressing for us today. What's your recommendation?
Chair, it is a annual hearing, so I think we should allow anyone in the room who wishes to have a comment to do that first and then close the public hearing if that's appropriate.
Okay. If you want to wait till after that, okay. Anything further?
No.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak during the public hearing today? Oh, Mr. Weaver.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. James Weaver, Holland and Knight, 511 Union Street. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I represent TowPro, as some of you know, have appeared before you many times. I'm here today to ask you to, at a minimum, defer STR's application. As has already been stated, there are no zones currently available. But more importantly, in terms of their application, there's no data before the commission to support an application for an additional heavy tower. There are currently 5 companies across the footprint that provide heavy towing services in our city. To our knowledge, there have been no complaints from the police department, no complaints from the highway patrol, no complaints from anyone who's involved in the heavy towing aspect of the towing industry for an additional company to come in at this time. Beyond the no demonstrated need, there's precedent. So currently all of the companies who provide heavy towing services also have light towing zones. So they're providing the light towing services for our city through this emergency program. In addition to that, 5 of the 15, I think, are also providing heavy towing services. And that system is working well. Changes to the towing system, to the emergency towing system, which is highly regulated and has been regulated by Metro and by this commission for a long time. It's not that there can't be and shouldn't be from time to time changes, but you have to make those changes based on very carefully considered data. These companies, all of these companies represented by a lot of these men and women over here, have invested millions and millions of dollars based on this system. So if we're going to change it, if we're going to make changes to the zones, if we're going to add players or take players out, that can happen, and I think your lawyer will tell you that can happen, but it ought to happen after a very careful analysis of what that change does and how it ripples through the entire ecosystem, if you will, of the towing industry, and not just the heavy towing industry, but the towing industry in the city writ large. Frankly, there's a difference in the margin between the heavy towing work and the lighter towing work. This board has taken the position in the past, and Teresa can perhaps talk to you about this, that in order to be a heavy tower, you needed to have a light towing. You needed to be involved in the light towing ecosystem, be a licensed emergency light tower in order to do the heavy. And the reason for that is not to allow somebody to come in, with all due respect, and cherry pick the very top of the financial layer, if you will, of the towing industry. And again, we're talking about emergency towing here. We're not talking about if you've got a tour bus in your backyard and you need that tour bus towed somewhere, I'm sure they can come get it and take it wherever you need it to go. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about the emergency, the highly regulated emergency system. And again, making changes to it is your prerogative. But I know I'm speaking for TowPro, but I got a feeling I'm speaking for a lot of the industry when they say if you're going to do that, we have to be very, very, very careful, and it should only be done after an enormous amount of analysis and, frankly, a little more of an opportunity for the industry to come in and have a conversation about it, as opposed to just somebody dropping an application in your hopper. No due respect, they did it pursuant to your rules, but it would be wise from our standpoint to go to have a lot of input again, not only from people in the industry, not only from people who have self-interest, obviously, but from the police department, from THP, from the folks who are dealing with this issue day in and day out. I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. And with that, we're happy to answer questions, but I know this is public comment, so you're not asking me questions. Thank you.
Does anyone else want to speak on the matter? Well, I will observe this is the annual hearing, and that's what we were here for, is to get the input from the industry and the interested parties. So, all right. Well, I'm going to put you back on the spot. Talk to me about what you think and what your thoughts are.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chair. So in preparing this agenda item, Mr. Rooker and I reached out to our friends at the Metro impound lot. Jonathan Massey is the liaison there, and Lieutenant Taylor Schmitz. We got some data. 6,929 cars were towed to the Metro impound lot in 2023. There have been 2,878 in 2024 thus far. Commissioners might recall a couple months back, those two individuals appeared before you requesting consideration of an Artura software type of tracking system to be able to keep up with the tows. That agenda item was indefinitely deferred pending more discussions with the industry, and a concern, I believe, of the commission was that the cost would be passed along to the consumer, the individual being towed. In reaching out to MNPD, they had a conflict today and weren't able to attend this meeting, a meeting coinciding at the same time. But they did respond that currently without that software, they have no data on response times. They have individual anecdotal evidence from time to time from officers saying perhaps this was a slow response time, but they have no way of tracking response times. And as a result of that, MMPD says they cannot recommend any changes to the zone. They don't have data to support any recommendations for change.
I think in the past we have looked at response time as well as complaints. Have there been any complaints about the towing companies brought to the Transportation Licensing Commission?
None which I'm pulling up before me now that we're not. We do receive complaints from time to time about towing and booting. Oftentimes that can be because someone got towed or booted. We don't have substantive complaints to point out any of these companies operating as being a problem, if that's appropriate to say.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Would you like me to kind of read the code provisions that relate to this and give you the legal context?
I think that would be helpful today.
Yes. So the provision about service zones for emergency tow licensees is found in section or 68545 of the Metropolitan Code, and I think that's going up there. It says, in order to provide for the immediate removal of those vehicles interrupting the proper and orderly flow of traffic, and thereby constituting an emergency situation as declared in section 68510, the Commission is authorized and directed to divide the geographical jurisdictional territory of the metropolitan government into zones for emergency wrecker service, which zones shall be established in a manner which best serves the traffic and safety needs of the community, and as near as possible divides the emergency wrecker business equitably among those persons licensed to provide emergency wrecker service. To each zone, the Commission shall assign at least one licensee. So you can have more than one licensee assigned to a zone. The provision that, the distinction that the companies are making is not really, I don't think it's really addressed in the code as much. The kind of heavy duty versus light duty, I think, is maybe more of a technical distinction in terms of what size trucks, tow trucks they have to have to tow larger vehicles as opposed to smaller cars. But the concept is that emergency, the definition of an emergency in section 510 includes the following acts and circumstances are declared to constitute an emergency situation requiring the immediate removal of a vehicle from the streets, alleys, roads, highways, and thoroughfares within the area of the metropolitan government. When a vehicle is parked, stopped, or standing in violation of any regulation or ordinance of the metropolitan government, that was A, sorry. B, when a vehicle is parked, stopped, or standing so as to obstruct the orderly flow of traffic. And C, when a vehicle is disabled by an accident and constitutes an obstruction to traffic and its immediate removal or storage for safekeeping is necessary in the interest of public safety and protection of property. So basically, the mission that the Commission is being given to carry out is very public safety focused and traffic focused. So you're looking at these zones being divided up from a perspective of what's best for the public, what will enable the public to be best and most quickly served. And I believe there's a 30-minute goal for the amount of time it takes the wrecker to show up. Section 545 that I was reading to you from before, though, does go on to say that in terms of data, one option is to get the data from the companies themselves. So it says that the Commission shall require all licensees, so those are the licensed companies, to report all calls which they made to the Commission, giving the date, the time, the name of the owner of the vehicle transported, type of vehicle, distance towed, and fee charged, and the license number. So I think one thing you could do is request that data from the licensees and then give NDOT staff some time to analyze it for you. So I think I would recommend, if you want to follow that process, which is prescribed in the code, a deferral, because we do not have that data at present. And I think there maybe is two separate questions also. Like, is STR qualified to be given a license as a wrecker company? And also, should the current zone assignments be altered? So I think if you give STR a license, that it's, the second question is kind of a foregone conclusion, because the provision in 545 says to divide it as evenly as possible among the licensees. So once they become a licensee, they become sort of entitled to have a section of, well, that's a bad word to use. It's not an entitlement. It's a privilege, but the idea is that if the more you divide it up, the more in the public interest it is, because you'll have more people serving the same limited general area, and so hopefully you'll have faster tows, and that'll clear up things for traffic and public interest and safety. And so I think the question that STR was talking about the heavy duty versus the light duty, again, it doesn't speak to that. It just speaks to those three A, B, and C categories, and that can include any vehicle that happens to fall in one of those three categories that's that stopped or standing, parked, stopped, or standing in violation of a regulation or ordinance of the Metropolitan government, a vehicle that's parked, stopped, or standing so as to obstruct the orderly flow of traffic, and the third one, maybe the one we think about the most, when a vehicle is disabled by an accident and constitutes an obstruction because of that. So basically the purpose of the emergency wrecker zone towing concept is to provide a methodology to get those cars that are blocking traffic out of the way as quickly as possible. That's the goal. And by by these companies meeting the requirements to perform these tows, they're entitled to be emergency wrecker services. Now, it is true that some of the companies that do hold zones are not equipped for the towing of the largest types of vehicles. And so because of that, in the past, the commission has allowed companies that do have that capacity to kind of back up their neighbors so that those tows will be, those vehicles will be towed regardless of where in the county the accidents happen. So, I mean, I think this is a lot of discretion that you have, and I feel like you need a lot of information in order to make any kind of decisions about it. So I think one way to do that would be to request the data contemplated in 545 from the companies, which is, again, all calls which the licensees made, the date, the time, the name of the owner of the vehicle transported, the type of vehicle, the distance towed, and the fee charged, and the license number. And so if you get your existing licensees to report that to you for like the last year, and then you give staff a considerable time to review that enormous amount of information to draw some conclusions from it, I think they would be able to make a more clear recommendation to you. As far as STR and the discussion that Mr. Weaver was saying about the concern that they should be able to do light duty as well, he is referring to some minutes from, I believe it was a 2008 meeting of the commission, and I either wasn't there or don't remember it. I did start in 2008. I was just barely beginning to represent this commission at that time, but I don't recall that specific one. But again, because the heavy duty, light duty distinction isn't really made in the code itself, it just talks about the, like, are they blocking traffic really? Like, are they in violation of ordinance? Are they blocking traffic? Are they in a wreck and need to be moved because they present an obstruction in that form? Like, that's what the code cares about, and how do we arrange that in such a way that we can maximize the speed with which the tows are done. So I'm thinking request that data. I'm thinking also that it is possible, according to 545, to assign more than one licensees to a zone. And the general language of 545 says you want to kind of try to divide them up approximately evenly. But again, the purpose of that is for the interests of the public. So,
Chairman, could I ask a question of our staff? And I think you spoke to this. Has there been any significant complaints from the police department? Because in essence, that's who is being served.
Yeah, it was Jonathan Massey who responded to our inquiry, and they said MMPD does not have data on response times. Of course, they'd again like to remind us that they came with their Octura software recommendation. But they said they cannot recommend any changes to the zones. They have individual anecdotal evidence from time to time from officers saying on this occasion, perhaps one was slow to respond, but they don't have a company that they are particularly aggrieved with at this time.
They probably got caught behind a Pebble Tavern or something. Can I make a motion, Mr. Chairman? Is it appropriate? Are we still in the public hearing?
We're in the public hearing. Give me one moment, a second. Mr. Kantz, could you go back to the microphone a second? Because I need clarification of something. You stated that you had a proposal where we didn't have to divide one of the zones or change it. Tell me again, in very detail, what are you suggesting?
We have about an 1.25 acre towing lot because we also do we have a THP zone for Davidson County.
Okay.
That lot, for all intents and purposes, can be considered our zone for potentially heavy duty or even medium duty accidents that are needing towed away, towed to the facility.
Wait, you're saying your lot could be your zone?
Well, I mean, every single wrecker service has a lot that they operate out of.
Right.
And that's what I'm suggesting is being our lot that we operate out of.
All right, that's your lot that you operate. But what part of the county are you saying you would cover?
There are 7 wrecker services that do not provide any heavy-duty wreckers.
Right.
They just don't have them. And so I was suggesting, due to the size of the zones for West Nashville and Dad's and TowPro and all those folks.
The ones who are doing the heavy-duty emergency service.
Yes. Being the overlay backup for those 7 wrecker services that do not have heavy-duty wreckers.
All right, so those other ones who are their zones, you were suggesting maybe getting part of covering one of those zones.
Covering those zones in the event of an accident. And then when there is an accident, say with a semi-truck, and there are a couple vehicles that are also included in it, that light-duty wrecker zone holder tows those 2 vehicles away.
So what you're saying is in the zones where light-duty people have those emergency wrecker zones,
yes,
but they don't have the equipment for the heavy duty.
Correct.
You'd be given the heavy duty for that zone, and dads would no longer come over and assist the company without the heavy duty equipment.
Correct.
All right.
It's my understanding now that when there is an accident, and dads, for instance, there's an accident with a semi-truck that involves another car. That car is also potentially picked up by dads, which is in the zone for another wrecker service.
Okay. Are you towing anywhere right now?
Yes.
Okay. What's your business right now that you're towing, and your zones?
We don't have a metro zone, of course.
Okay.
But we are involved with on the THP rotation for.
And when you say THP, Tennessee Highway Patrol.
Highway Patrol. I'm sorry.
All right.
For Davidson County, Williamson County, Dixon County, and Cheatham County.
So Tennessee Highway Patrol can call you, and you have a wrecker service with them.
We get there and we do whatever is required to clear the scene.
And that's the pictures of the trucks that I've seen in your application.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
I have one more question while you're there. Do you also have light-duty trucks or only heavy-duty trucks?
We do have some light-duty trucks, yes.
And what's the count on both of those?
We have 8 heavy-duty trucks, and then we have about 8 light-duty rollbacks as well.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Koskonis, the data that you were recommending that we get before considering a change, what conclusions might that shed light on?
So I'm not sure it actually spells this out in the code itself, but I think it is what TD was getting at, like to see how timely the tows are responding. Without data from police to compare that to, though, it might be hard to like make that determination. But we or NDOT staff could take a look at the data the companies themselves report and see if they can draw any conclusions from that lead them to make a recommendation to you.
But that could be thousands. That could be thousands of tows, right? It would be, okay.
But it is provided for in the code that they give you that data.
But why would we get the data if the police department's not complaining? I mean,
I'm just telling you what the code says you should do. I don't have the...
Right. I mean, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Chair, there was someone who wanted to speak.
There is. Thank you. Please identify yourself.
Okay, my name is Carla, and I am a
Carla what?
Collier.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a representative of 3 of the 4 smaller zones he's speaking of.
That do not have heavy duty?
Do not have heavy duty.
Okay.
Our concern is, as he said, he doesn't want a zone for light duty at the time, is we would lose part of our zones, 3 different zones, if he gets the open door to come in and then tries to take over our light duty. It works perfect. We don't have any complaints of our backup heavy duty vehicles that come in our zone. There's no complaints of anybody taking our light duty calls, our cars, any police officers complaining that nobody's getting to the calls on. You know, people complain. If the calls weren't getting done, they would have record of it.
So are you telling me that when there's a need for heavy duty to come into your zone and there's a car that's a light duty, you pick up the light duty and the other company picks up the heavy duty, and there's no... Well, what does that mean most of the time?
I mean...
Is there a crossover where sometimes the heavy duty company's also bringing in a light duty truck to tow something?
The police officers will call for whatever truck we need. They'll say rollback, light duty, heavy duty.
Right.
They're calling our zone, but they're also calling the heavy duty companies also. So there's not a problem with them coming in our zone and taking our calls.
That was my question.
Yeah.
You don't see any overlapping where the heavy duty company's also sending a light duty vehicle,
Right,
towing truck out there?
We don't have that problem.
Okay. And what's your zone up there?
I'm a Bailey's.
All right, what color are you?
I'm the blue.
Right there? Okay.
And green for Martin's Wrecker Service. And Mike's Custom Towing, I think, is the yellow down there.
All right. Thank you for your comments. All right, Commissioner Rogers, I think you were itching to do a motion, and we'll follow it up with further discussion if need be. First, I'm going to close the annual hearing.
Yeah, I make a motion, we approve the current permittees for another year.
I second.
Any further discussion among the commissioners? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Do we need to take action on the application by STR Towing and Recovery?
What staff can do is hold on to that application if a zone becomes available. If one of these companies relinquish a zone and there is a zone available, we'll know that this application is on file. STR does have a general and non-consent license with the TLC already. They just won't assume any of the zones currently in place.
Okay, thank you.
Can I make a motion for a nature break?
You don't even need to make a motion. I'm going to call a break. We're going to take a short break, 5 to 10 minutes, okay, and then we'll reconvene.
Yeah, I'm going to look over to our legal advisor over there to discuss the public chapter 1017 that has gone into play, which is affecting booting services.
As one of the members of the audience just passed out to you, it also does affect towing services in some ways. So this was a change by the state legislature that it kind of changed both. It primarily changes booting, but it does make some changes to towing as well. And it appears to be basically consolidating all of the law or statutory provisions relating to towing and booting into one place. Basically, it starts out just kind of do you have the text of the public chapter you can put up, TD? It starts out repealing a number of existing sections, but that's not the big change that it looks like, because almost all of those provisions are reincorporated back in to Chapter 5531, which is this new chapter of the state code that governs towing and booting, or as we may more modernly call it, vehicle immobilization. It seems to, so the biggest changes, like I said, are in the booting arena, but they're like the changes that are mentioned in the handout that you received from some of the towing industry shows that my opinion that these were not major changes. As far as the towing industry is concerned, they would disagree with my interpretation of that. They do think they're major changes just because they are changes that cost them a fair amount of money. They can't just send things by USPS anymore. They have to send it by FedEx, which is more expensive, and they can't just send things, and they can't stick with the signs that they already have. They have to make new, larger signs. So that's an additional expense for them as well. None of this is under our control. This is state law. It's already enacted. You know, there's nothing we can do about that except follow it. The first section is pretty much just definitions, and then when you get down to 5531.201, you get more into the meat of it. And it says booting and towing prohibited on commercial parking lots, except as otherwise provided by subsection B and 5531.301. It is an offense for a commercial parking lot owner to boot or tow a vehicle located on the lot owner's lot if the vehicle is not abandoned, immobile, or unattended motor vehicle. Now, if you look back up to the definitions section, you can see the definitions of those three terms. And they're relatively narrow. And I don't think any of them are situations in which anyone would want to boot. I think they're probably all situations in which people would want to tow. But I could be wrong. I don't know the industry as they do. So an abandoned motor vehicle has to be on private property without the consent of the owner for more than 48 hours before it can be towed. The person who did this handout made the point also that that's hard to track. And then unattended and, wait, hang on, let me find the other provisions. So unattended motor vehicle means a motor vehicle that is either unattended by the owner or authorized driver and that interferes with or impedes the orderly flow of traffic. So it's kind of like what we were talking about with the tows previously, the emergency tows. You know, if it's actually blocking traffic, then you can, if it's there more than 48 hours on private property or different periods of time on public property. If it's unattended, meaning it's actually blocking traffic, or if it's immobilized, which means that it's, hang on, let me go back to that definition. Whoops. Immobilized means, a mobile motor vehicle means a motor vehicle, a trailer, semi-trailer, or a combination, they always say all that is immobilized and incapable of moving under its own power due to an accident, mechanical breakdown, weather condition, or other emergency situation. So, those are the three situations in which anyone can tow or boot in Davidson County after July 1, after this act goes into effect. And the next step for Metro, if we were to, and that preempts our existing Chapter 681 of the Metro Code. Totally. And so, beginning July 1, effectively anyone who has existing permits from us, they're going to have to get new ones under this statute. And that's most relevant for booting, because I think that, like I said, I think I saw the biggest change in booting, which is that, as I understand it, even after Metro and Metro's council would have to enact an ordinance kind of following the instructions of the state law and incorporating all the provisions in it that the state law requires. And once we do that, then we would have the ability to begin regulating the booting again. But right now, I think there's almost no circumstance under which booting is allowed, or if there are, there's three circumstances. But when a vehicle is blocking traffic or immobilized to the point that it can't move, or sitting there for 48 hours, like, you're going to want to tow it. You're not going to want to boot it, right? And so I feel like basically there's no booting in Davidson County after July 1 until council adopts an ordinance in accordance with the state statute. Like, all of our booting licenses will effectively become invalid.
So procedurally, we have a new state law that becomes effective July 1st. We have to have the Metro Council create some code provisions. And
yes.
Then we can reissue permits to companies to boot if they can find any immobilized.
Well, one of the big changes that it seems to me is that right now, and our Metro Code, our Chapter 681 actually required this, that the companies that do the booting can't actually own the lots.
Right.
In the booting section of new 5531, which begins at 201 and then at 203 talks about the Metro ordinance that we need to pass, and lists out the things that that ordinance should contain. Like, one of the things is it talks about lot owners, and we don't allow lot owners to boot, but this is preempted by the state law, and in state law, it seems to me that only parking lot attendees who are defined as employees of parking lot owners will be the ones given authority to boot under the new ordinance, assuming Metro adopts one. So it does seem to me to kind of to be very disruptive of their current business model. And I suppose somewhat disruptive for the tow companies as well. The tow company provisions are like Part 3 and Part 4. Basically, they're taking the laws that were previously repealed at the very beginning and kind of reincorporating them into this chapter to put it all in one place. And they do have some provisions like bigger signs and like having to use FedEx that makes things a little tougher for the tow companies too. But the tow companies are not subject to 201 and 203, which I think are the biggest problem, and the booting companies are. And so I think tow companies can continue operating. They do have to operate within those parameters and tow for those reasons. But once Metro adopts a ordinance, we can allow towing in other situations. So, I think once we have the ordinance in place, things can go back to normal a little bit more, except that it will be a different normal from what we have now, if that makes any sense.
Let me ask a couple of things. One, will this impact in any way when there's a car, abandoned on my street, and I want MNPD to come get it towed? I know at one time, a few months ago or years ago, there was a problem getting wrecker service. Does this impact that in any way?
So it does affect that a little bit, because in terms of what the definition of abandoned is, it addresses public as well as private, since we usually talk about
right.
I asked the lady what PPI meant in her printout, and she said private property impound. So when you're towing a vehicle from private property, you have the 48-hour requirement, which is usually what we deal with. But in terms of public towing...
Private property?
Yeah, for public property is public right-of-way. That's correct. Then you have a slightly different definition of abandoned. Hang on, let me scroll up to that. I went too far.
Well, Sean was complaining that nobody would come get cars.
Abandoned motor vehicle means a motor vehicle that is over 4 years old and is left unattended on public property for more than 10 days, or is in an obvious state of disrepair and is left unattended on public property for more than 3 days, or has remained illegally on public property for a period of more than 48 hours, or has remained on private property without the consent of the owner or person in control of the property for more than 48 hours, has remained on residential or private property without the consent of the owner or person in control of the property. So that allows a little bit quicker. Or has been stored, parked, or left in a garage, trailer park, or any other type of storage or parking for more than 30 consecutive days. So those are actually all the different definitions of abandoned.
If it's all right, I assume we don't have to take any action on this particular matter today.
What I'm basically saying is beginning on July 1, I don't think this commission is going to have any authority over booting anymore whatsoever. I think it's like if you were to take action on any of the booting matters, it's like going to be valid till July 1, and then it's not going to be valid anymore. So that seems kind of pointless to me.
So this new company application, going on to the next agenda item. All right, well, let's go ahead and state it for the record here. It's a new company application from Solar End Risk Management.
It is, and the application certainly is in order under the previous ordinance. It would have been NDOT would have recommended to approve. It was deferred last month pending the conclusion of this law. The law has been placed in public chapter. If you were to approve this company, we would have the authority over them until July 1st.
So it doesn't appear to be any reason to go ahead and approve unless there's some emergency for approving it.
There's no emergency that we're aware of.
All right. Is there a motion on that then?
I move we defer it till the July meeting when it doesn't matter, right?
A second.
All right. On the motion to defer Solar and Risk Management application, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed? All right. The motion passes. Ms. Costanos, I wasn't meaning to cut you off, except that I wanted to kind of move on to some things that we needed to get done before we lose a quorum today, okay?
Sure, sorry.
All right. No problem. Thank you for that, for illuminating that to us. Going to be a whole new booting scenario coming up soon. Shared urban mobile devices on our agenda today. A request for Lime for 50 scooter fleet increase per TLC rules and procedures, section 913.
And we do have a representative of Lime, Lily Krause, here with us today. I'll quickly talk you through this request by Lime. In your rules, 913, a fleet increase metric was placed. Basically, this relies on utilization, which is rides per scooter per day. And I believe the commission's intent was to set that number at an intentionally high mark of 2.5 rides per day. Essentially, a company can request an increase of no more than 50 scooters if they hit that metric of 2.5 rides per scooter per day over the last 30 days. Lime qualified for that in May. I've put their utilization for the last 6 months up on the screen, and as you can see in May, they hit 3.23 rides per scooter per day. So their request would be for 50 additional scooters per the fleet increase metric. I can attest that they are a great company to work with. They are indeed being utilized most highly, more than any other company that operates here in Nashville. The fleet increase metric rule does require that the company have a plan to equitably distribute those scooters throughout the city. NDOT's recommendation, as it is on all things that operate downtown, is that we're at capacity.
When it says Lime scooter utilization and you've got a number up there, what is that really telling us?
So Lime is currently operating 700 scooters in Davidson County, and in the month of May, with those 700 scooters, each scooter was ridden 3.23 times per day. Okay. Which is, I'm sure Lily could tell you in other markets they operate, this is very, very high. This is a large utilization, and it is the highest of the three companies that operate in Nashville.
Jean, introduce yourself and share with us what you want to tell us.
Lily Krause, I'm with Government Relations Team for Lime. I will concur that our utilization in Nashville is kind of sky high and compared to comparable markets. Additionally, we have a much lower fleet here, which contributes to that high utilization number. But we believe that we've been a responsible operator here for about 5 years. We appreciate the partnership with NDOT to grow the fleet to where we are at today. And we do have a responsible and equitable plan to deploy 50 additional scooters, which we think is a incremental increase in the city. So we would ask to be able to deploy 50% of those scooters within, so 25 scooters within the downtown midtown district, and then 25 scooters in equity zones or outside of those, so East Nashville, North Nashville, West Nashville, et cetera.
Hi there. Thank you for coming today. How many do you have in the fleet right now? How many permits do you have?
We are at 700, which is our, how many permits.
That's how many permits you have now?
Yep.
Mr. Schaefer, how many scooter permits are there with all companies?
Each company has 700, so 2,100 total scooters.
How many scooters do you have in cities of comparable size to Nashville?
So for instance, Austin's one of the markets that I represent. If we're in Austin, we have Lime has 3,500 scooters, and then another company has 3,500 scooters. So a lot bigger fleets in some other comparable markets.
Thank you.
Denver, we have 5,000 vehicles.
Are you the only company in Denver?
Nope, we are one of 2 companies in Denver.
And they have, you have 5,000.
Yeah, they have a smaller fleet. We have a larger fleet
right.
in Denver.
And you also operate in Seattle.
We sure do.
Which has, what, 5,000 to 6,000?
I believe so. That's not part of my...
Right. The last time I looked.
But yes.
Yeah.
Several thousand.
I've had a crash, I don't know if you heard, I was elected on Tuesday, and this is my first meeting. So I had a crash course in the previous meeting minutes, but I remember Commissioner Rogers saying something about e-bikes being part of the contract as well. Do you have that as part of your contract?
Mm-hmm. In your last marathon meeting, we were asked to increase our e-bike fleet to 125, which we have recently been able to achieve in the last week or so. We finally got that fleet out there. So
how many do you have? How many did you have before?
25, and then 50 a month before that, and then we increased to 125 in the last month.
So you have 125 now?
Mm-hmm.
Within the last week that happened?
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
And I might point out, when this was done 3 years ago, although I guess there were just two of us there, then in the proposals, which became the contract, they were the only company that promised 125 bikes 3 years ago that we've only now reached. And they also, we put in a requirement last month for a ratio of one bike for every 4 scooters, subject to our approval. So we've actually required all 3 companies to have 125 bikes. And apparently the other 2 haven't yet.
So one bike for every
4 scooters.
4 scooters.
Yeah.
So with the increase of 50, we'd have 16 more e-bikes as well?
If we approved them, yeah.
Okay.
Which,
We'd be happy to bring 16 additional e-bikes if approved as well.
Another question for you. Where are the 50 new scooters going to go? Are these going to be servicing the same areas, zones? Are they going to be expanding to new zones? Are there any in sort of lower opportunity zones?
Oh, absolutely. So the current fleet is kind of divvied up for scooters, it's 70% is in the zone which is called downtown midtown, which includes, I think it's like based on the police precincts, honestly. So it's the central plus the Midtown Hills precincts. And we are proposing with this additional fleet that instead of the 70-30 split, we do 50-50. So 25 vehicles in that central area where most of our business is, and then 25 additional vehicles to serve more underserved areas outside of that central district. So a more equitable distribution plan than we already even have with our existing fleet.
Mr. Schaefer, how's the complaint department on the Lime scooters going?
No one's lukewarm on scooters. Love them or hate them. We do receive a number of complaints on scooters being ridden on sidewalks, improperly parked or tipped over. Of the complaints we receive, I do have great success working with Lily and her team, Brandon, Alex, Jad, on getting those rebalanced into the proper locations. The complaints we receive are, I would call, user error. It's not from the company putting them in bad places. It's the users.
I know one of the areas we were very concerned about was response time to abandoned scooters. Can you shed any light on that with Lime?
That should be occurring within 2 hours. I can attest that I receive an email back very quickly from the operators. From there, they go out and they rebalance them. Lily might be able to speak.
and for the benefit of our new members, how many rides are there annually?
I happen to bring that information along with
I
me.
figured you did. So we're still at about 1.2 million.
We've had 1.2 million each of the last 3 years, and we're trending toward that once again here in 2024. We expect the e-bike ride should increase exponentially with the additional fleet.
Yeah, I sure hope somebody rides them after I've been pushing for so many years.
I do too.
Yeah, I bet you do.
They're getting ridden.
I had a question for you as well. It says here in section 905 that there's a hotline. They have a required 30-minute, the operators have a required 30-minute response time to all accessibility or ADA-related complaints and issues. How have you found the response time to be related to that?
So the rule kind of came from a time period when scooters were in its infancy, and so it's not a phone number that we're using. Each company has set up Nashville-specific email addresses that go to all employees who are on staff or are working during that time period. So whether we receive a hub request or whether we receive a request in another way from the public, or whether I observe a violation through our Populous platform, I send it to that help@Lime Nashville email address, and I'm getting an email back either from Alex or Brandon quickly telling me they've received my email and they are headed to rebalance.
Is the 30 minutes, does that mean from the time that, what is the response time timing? What is the 30 minutes?
I would consider that from the time period that I've made them aware that they're in
I
violation.
think the 30 minutes is maybe just to literally respond, to be contacted about the fact that there is like a scooter that's not balanced properly and that it needs to be rebalanced. And they say, yes, we'll get on that. Like that's the 30 minutes. And then the 2 hours applies to actually moving the scooter.
It says, shall be capable of rebalancing or relocating SUMDs and be able to respond to requests, emergencies, and other issues at any time within 30 minutes. So that means they should be able to relocate a scooter within 30 minutes? Am I reading that correctly?
I think it's just to respond to it. I mean, if you look further down, it says, okay, there is a 2 hour provision further down.
Yeah, that's what was confusing to me. I'm not sure if it was. I'm just thinking of someone who's, in a wheelchair and it's being blocked by a scooter on a sidewalk. I'd much rather have a 30-minute response time than a 2-hour response time.
And that is one of the reasons why we have put in the rules, and we're working really hard and have made in Connect Downtown, because the biggest issue is in the downtown core.
Sure.
And though we have scooters everywhere, because I see them everywhere, but the majority of them are in the downtown core. So that's why we've getting the corrals set up in the downtown core first, and looking at how we can actually encourage people to pick up and drop off in the same area. One of the new rules requires that they add a penalty. So if a person does not, once we get it in, they'll geofence it. And if someone rents a scooter and does not return it to one of the corral areas that we've designated, they will actually put a penalty out there.
Seems like something that should have happened on the front end.
Yes, it should have, but we're getting there. So that's why we are working really hard to get that done. And we've been working with the scooter companies to get that map set up. And we're pretty close to having it done that we'll actually be able to go out and install the corrals. So we're working really diligently hard to get through all of that.
If the commissioners will bear with me, I'd like to go ahead and we can elaborate more about the scooters and things of that nature, but I would like, while we still have a quorum, to take some action one way or the other on the request for for an increase of 50 scooters.
I'll make a motion. Let me ask a question. You said that Midtown is considered part of downtown in our core. Yeah. I don't see Midtown in the same way I do downtown. I mean, am I wrong about that?
Well, and what it...
Well, I mean, if we're going to require them to geofence outside of downtown, I don't have a problem.
We will be setting up, wherever we set up bike corrals and scooter corrals, they will be geofencing it, and we will be requiring folks to return it to the area.
Right, but so is Midtown going to include that requirement?
There are going to be some areas in Midtown where we will be adding some of the scooter corrals because we have a problem with scooters in that area.
Okay, but we're going to have to approve that map.
We are working on the map.
Okay.
We're using a lot of their data to help us, and we're working on the map with the assistance of the scooter companies to understand where the demand is, of where people are actually riding them, where they're picking them up, where they're most likely dropping them off, so we can make sure we have ample. And then that'll also make it easier for them for a rebalancing. So that's where the 2 hours will come into play. Okay. And that's really focusing more on the downtown core area where we have high pedestrian traffic, and looking at how we can reduce the conflicts between the pedestrians, the cars, and the scooters and the bikes.
Do we have an ETA on the corrals?
I'm hoping the map will get finalized tomorrow. And then I'm looking that we would probably give us about 5-6 weeks to get them all done. And then we should be able to actually put the map out, start the geofencing. We kind of need to do an intro to the community, especially those that are renting, because there's some other things that we're putting into effect that we want to make sure are not happening. I think some of them you've already put into effect. It might. One was we have a problem where someone will buy multiple scooters for their parties. They should not be able to do that anymore. You can only buy one scooter for yourself, and that's because we were seeing a lot of kids riding the scooters, and that was, you have to be at least 18 to ride a scooter. So that should eliminate that problem. I'm not sure if y'all have put that into effect, but that was one of the rules that we brought in as well. And that also would help with some issues the police department was having as well with the scooters being rented through like a Visa card that would be bought at Walgreens or something. And it would work that way with the false ID. And so now we're trying to, they're not accepting those as well. So it's got to be a legit credit card and all of that.
Okay.
So, but I just want to remind the commission that, you know, we are working through all of this. I would really love for this to come back before y'all once we get the corral set up and all of that. There is a lot of complaints that we do get from the community, and especially in the downtown and midtown area, about scooters not being returned in the way of people walking, just not safe, people not using them appropriately. So if this could wait a little bit for us to get that organized, it would be a great benefit. So thank you.
That was what I was going to suggest. So I make a motion to defer the fleet increase until the corrals are set up.
Can I just
say something really quick?
Oh.
No, wait, there's a motion on the floor. That hasn't got a second.
No second, though.
Okay. I want to make a motion that we approve the 50 and they be outside of the current
Hold on.
operations.
We need to take care of the first motion first.
Well, it didn't get a second.
I know. I need to.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Motion fails for, is there a second? Motion fails for lack of a second. Okay.
Okay. Sorry.
the second motion to defer?
Say what?
No, it didn't get a second. My motion is to approve the 50, that all 50 be outside the downtown, midtown zone for now, until we get the map, and then we can reconsider where they might be allowed.
I'll second that one.
It has the same effect, so I agree with that.
All right. There's a motion on the floor. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right. You clearly understand what the ruling was, okay? All right.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And I have to ask, since we're talking about SUMDs, about an RFP for a docked bike system, which I've done before.
Yes, sir. And I appreciate your comments, too, that you provided with staff. So thank you. Yes, we actually have the documented. We got the document back from those folks and external staff members as well, because we sent it over to Parks because the bikes directly interact with our Greenway system. We got our comments back from the Greenway. We're incorporating them all now, and we should have all of that finalized, actually, I would say this week, but my staff member who's handling it is actually not in. She took a vacation, so she gets back on Tuesday, so we should get that done and over to procurement to start the process to actually get it set up so we can get it out. It takes about 3 weeks for it to go through the procurement process, just to check on everything, and then we'll move forward from there.
Okay. Last time we approved the RFP, I believe. Do you remember?
Yes.
It's basically under our authority. The department has no authority. It's ours.
So well, let me get into let me look up.
I don't think the law even mentions the department.
But yes, last time you did
We approved
approve the RFP.
Yeah, which shouldn't stop you from going to procurement and get it started.
Is it the RFP or the contract? Because last time this went, this was moved forward by the health department, not by our department.
No, it wasn't. No.
That's longer ago. No, the original draft RFP did come before the commission for review and approval.
Yeah.
Mr. Rogers is right.
But there's no reason you can't take the draft to procurement. And I won't promise that I won't change it, but I'll try not to.
And I mean, I'm not absolute. I have to look at the code provision to see if I'm absolutely sure that that's a required step.
But you agree that it's all under our authority. I'm pretty sure last time.
Contracting authority is under the TLC.
Right. Well,
All right. Well, I'm going to table this particular discussion that can be probably dealt with between the commission, TDOT, and Metro Legal. But we have an issue now. I think we're down to 4 commissioners, and we have a body of 9, correct?
Correct. We no longer have a quorum.
I move we adjourn.
Well,
can we even adjourn, though?
Hold on.
I mean, if we don't have a quorum, can we vote to it?
Yes, you can adjourn when you don't have a quorum. But
Hold on. Is there anything on the agenda that that is just discussions or informative or?
You can still hear informational items from staff.
Yes, that's what I was trying to say. Thank you. It says to me we're on to the disciplinary hearings next.
You have disciplinary hearings and you have application reviews.
And we can't do any of those.
Not sure that we can.
Go round us up another commissioner. All right.
Can we even, seriously, can we even vote to adjourn?
You can.
I'll renew my motion.
Folks, I'm embarrassed and I apologize that we do not have a quorum to be able to vote on anything or take any action as a commission. One of the commissioners was just brought, well, two of the commissioners were just brought on the last 2 days, and one arranged her schedule to be able to be here for the past 4.5 hours that she was here. So we're going to have to adjourn and move everything to July, which is starting to get to be a habit. I'm your new chairperson. I'm going to do my very best to keep these meetings moving along so we can start catching up, because everything is getting bumped to the next meeting. And I'm going to encourage the commissioners to start planning from 12:30 to at least 5:30 that we're going to have our derrieres sitting here to do business. We will take breaks, but we're going to bring snacks or whatever, but the commissioners need to be sitting here prepared to get it caught up and get it done. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
Mr. Chairman, Matt just asked, I apologize.
Could you state your name, please?
Yes, sir. Derek Cruz. I'm with Gray Line of Tennessee. Could these agenda items be moved to the top of the agenda in July?
We always seem to be at bottom. That's on purpose.
I will talk to Mr. Rooker, and we did do that once before when things were moved. There was a gentleman here who had sat through 2 deferments, and we moved his up to the front. So the suggestion was about moving people who sat here all day up to the front of the next meeting, especially things that need action and going to take hearings on them, like disciplinary. And to the new commissioners, thank you for being here and welcome aboard. And you will find that I, on occasion, will interrupt folks in order to get us moving along, because I'm tired of us having to push business off. It's not fair to the public as well as to the businesses. My apologies. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
We need to operate like a House of Representatives.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.